Welcome. Please leave a comment where you're watching from, and drop a sub and like if you like the video. You ever meet someone who just gets you? Like right away. No awkward small talk. No wondering if they're into you. Just instant connection. Like kismet. Like, where have you been all my life? That was Lauren. And for about 6 days, it was kind of perfect. Until it wasn't. Until it got dark. I've been on Tinder long enough to know how these things usually go. You match, you flirt, maybe you meet up. Half the time, there's no chemistry. The other half, it fizzles out before the second date. I wasn't looking for anything special. Then Lauren matched with me. Her profile didn't scream anything unusual. 3 photos, all tasteful. One of her in a flowy sundress on a rooftop bar, another with her holding a glass of wine and smiling, and a third of her next to a golden retriever. Her bio was short. Lover of deep convos, espresso martinis, and bad decisions. Let's make one together. I messaged first. Me, define bad decision. Because I've made a few. Lauren, how tall are you? Now normally that would have been a red flag. I know how that sounds. But something in her tone felt playful. She wasn't one of those height checkers. Just direct. Me, 6 feet 1 inch. You. Lauren, 5 feet 8 inches. Emotionally 4 feet 11 inches. I laughed. We kept texting. Her vibe was electric. She replied fast, had great timing, and wasn't afraid to flirt hard. She told me she worked in marketing at a local agency downtown. Said she liked running, but only when she was angry. That her parents were divorced but civil. That her ex was a non-event. We met up 2 days later. Drinks at a bar on King Street. She wore a black halter top, red lipstick, and smelled like coconut and something sharp underneath, like peppercorn or burnt sugar. She walked in like she owned the place. I liked that. We ordered 2 espresso martinis and sat at a table in the back. Within 10 minutes, we were already joking like we'd known each other for years. No awkward silences. No checking phones. She touched my arm when she laughed. Bit her lip when I leaned closer. Told me I had that quiet, dangerous energy. We made out in the parking lot outside her building. She texted me before I even got home. Lauren, I'm not trying to freak you out, but I think I might already be obsessed with you. I smiled. It felt flattering. Intense, sure, but flattering. Me, I'll try not to disappoint. Lauren, good. I'd hate to have to kill you. She added a winky face after that. I laughed. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have. Day 2. She asked to see me again. That night. I said sure. We ordered Thai and watched the girl with the dragon tattoo on her couch. She curled up next to me like we'd done this 100 times. Halfway through, she turned and said deadpan, "If you ghost me, I will find you." I chuckled. That's fair. She didn't laugh. I stayed the night. We didn't sleep much. Day 3. She brought me coffee at work. Showed up. 8:52 a.m. Texted. Look out your window. There she was, standing on the sidewalk with 2 lattes and a muffin. Now, I hadn't told her where I worked. That tripped a wire in my brain. I came downstairs, smiling, pretending not to be weirded out. Me, how'd you find this place? Lauren, you mentioned your office was near the river. I reverse searched your LinkedIn. I paused. You're thorough. She leaned in. I like to know things. She kissed my cheek and walked off. Day 4. She texted me nonstop. Nonstop. No exaggeration. 62 texts over the course of my workday. If I didn't reply within 10 minutes, she'd double text. Lauren, are you mad? Lauren, I'm sorry if I said something weird. Lauren, I just feel really close to you, that's all. I told her I was slammed at work. She apologized. 2 hours later, she sent a photo of her in the bath with a caption. Wish you were here. That night, she asked if I wanted to meet her parents. I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Day 5. She showed up at my place. Uninvited. She'd never been there before. I never gave her my address. I came home from the gym and found her sitting on my stoop, holding a plastic container of lasagna. I made this for you, she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I asked how she found my place. She said she just followed the trail. I didn't press. We ate. It was good. We had sex. She cried after, said she didn't know why. I held her awkwardly until she fell asleep. I stayed awake. That's when I started to feel it. The shift. The thing that happens when someone crosses from intense to unsettling. Day 6. I told her we needed space. I was gentle. Said I liked her, but it was moving too fast. She didn't respond for 5 hours. Then she sent a string of messages. Lauren, I knew this would happen. Lauren, you're just like everyone else. Lauren, you said you liked me. Was that a lie? Lauren, I don't understand. Lauren, don't do this to me. Lauren, please. I didn't reply. She sent a voice memo. I didn't listen. Then she posted a photo on Instagram, black and white, her face half in shadow, mascara streaked. The caption, he said he was different. Day 7. I blocked her. Phone. Instagram. Tinder. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. You think I can't find you? I blocked it. New number the next day. Unknown. You can't ghost a ghost. I reported it. Changed my number. Thought maybe I was safe. I wasn't. About a week later, a coworker said someone had called the office asking for me. Said she was my fiancée. Left a message. Tell Jay I forgive him. I hadn't told anyone at work about Lauren. No one even knew I was dating. That night, I checked the security camera outside my building. I don't usually, but something told me to look. There she was. 2:38 a.m. Standing across the street. Just standing. Not moving. Staring at my window. She stood there for 47 minutes. Then walked away. I started sleeping with the lights on. Started checking the back seat of my car before getting in. Started carrying a pocket knife. I'd never done that before. 2 days after that, I got a package. No return address. Inside, a photo strip. You know, the kind you take in a booth at the mall. Except I hadn't gone to any booth. The photos were of me. In my apartment. Sleeping. Different angles. Different nights. In one, my eyes were barely open like I'd stirred. She'd been inside. I called the police. They took a report. Told me there wasn't much they could do unless she made a direct threat or physically harmed me. I asked about restraining orders. They said I'd need her name, address, more evidence. I realized then, I didn't even know her last name. I moved. New apartment. New locks. Different part of town. No social media. No dating apps. No contact. For a while things were quiet. Then I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. There was only one sentence. I know you still think about me. I burned it. That was 8 months ago. I still don't use dating apps. I still double-check my locks every night. Sometimes, when I'm driving, I see a woman with long hair and red lipstick in the rearview mirror and feel my chest tighten. My friends say I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am. I was 23 when I first gave in to the glossy promise of Tinder. My friends had been pushing me for years. Nilo, just try it. What's the worst that could happen? I'd always resisted. There was something humiliating about the idea of advertising myself with filtered photos and witty one-liners. But after years of rejection and the crushing silence of unread texts, I figured, what the hell? I wasn't what you'd call traditionally handsome. My hair never sat right, my jawline was weak, and my confidence was stuck somewhere between mild and non-existent. So I knew better than to expect miracles. And for the first couple of weeks, Tinder lived up to my low expectations. Left swipe. Left swipe. Match, but her bio was a Bible quote and 3 emojis. Left swipe. Then came her. Her name was Leora. Blonde. Pale skin like moonlight. Green eyes that stared straight through the screen. She didn't just look good, she looked unreal. I mean that literally. I assumed she was fake. A bot, or worse, some catfish running a scam from their grandma's basement. Still, the message she sent was different. Hey Nilo, you look like you'd be fun to get coffee with. That was it. No sketchy links. No weird grammar. No over-the-top compliments. Just a simple, chill opener. And for some reason, it rattled me. I stared at her message for hours, wondering if I should respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, avoid the humiliation of being played. Another part, smaller but louder, just wanted to believe it was real. I didn't reply. 3 days passed, and I figured that was the end of it. But then another message. Still no coffee, winky face. Now I was intrigued. Bots don't follow up. And if she was a scammer, she was playing the long game. I clicked on her profile again, 4 photos, all different enough to seem authentic. A short bio. I love vintage horror films and driving with no destination. Be weird with me. So I finally messaged back. Something safe. Sorry, I'm new to this. Wasn't sure if you were real. She replied instantly. Totally fair. Want me to prove it? That led to a video call. My heart was pounding as I answered, expecting a blank screen or a dude in a hoodie. But it was her, Leora. Real, laughing, brushing her hair behind her ear like she'd done this a million times before. I was stunned into silence for a moment. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah. Just, you're really real." "Last I checked," she smirked. We talked for hours that night. And then we did it again the next night. And the next. It became a thing. FaceTimes before bed, voice notes during lunch, flirty texts with just enough bite to make me wonder if there was something more. About a month in, she asked me to visit her. "I know it's a drive," she said, "but I'd love to see you in person." It was 8 hours by car, which wasn't nothing. But I couldn't say no. I'd never met anyone who made me feel like she did. Like I mattered. Like I was seen. So I said yes. Took 2 days off work, packed a bag, and hit the road before I could change my mind. It wasn't until I was halfway there that things started to feel off. She texted constantly. Like obsessively. "Where are you now? How much longer? Are you reading my messages?" At first, I thought she was just nervous. I was nervous too. But when I didn't reply for 20 minutes, I got 5 messages in a row, all caps. "Answer me." It made my stomach tighten, but I told myself to chill. Maybe she had anxiety. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe everything was fine. I wish I'd turned around. But I didn't. I kept driving. By the time I pulled up to the address Leora had given me, it was just past 2 p.m. The sun was bright, but it didn't make the place look any less wrong. Her house sat at the end of a gravel road surrounded by dense woods, the kind that seemed to silence everything but your own heartbeat. The trees pressed in close, casting long shadows despite the daylight. For a second, I questioned whether I'd taken a wrong turn. Everything looked the same, dirt roads, rusted street signs, no cell reception. But then I saw it. The red buggy she'd sent me a picture of weeks ago, parked crooked in front of a battered garage. That was my confirmation. I'd made it. I parked beside it and texted her. "Here, smiley face." Her reply came instantly. Just a smiley face. No words. No "come on in." Just that. I stared at it for a second, thumb hovering over the screen. Something about it didn't sit right, too minimal, too cold. But I told myself she was just playing it cool. Maybe she was nervous. I stepped out of the car and approached the front porch, my boots crunching on the gravel. The house was older than I'd expected. Weather-worn siding. A boarded-up window on the second floor. The kind of place that might have once been charming, but had long since given up. As I raised my hand to knock, I felt it. That prickling sensation on the back of your neck when someone's watching you. I looked up. There, in the second-floor window, behind the dusty glass and cracked wooden frame, stood a man. His face was pale, almost gray, and his eyes locked onto mine like he'd been waiting for me. He didn't move. Just stared. I froze, hands still midair. My heart did a slow, hard thud. Leora had mentioned her dad once, briefly. Said he was out of the picture and lived halfway across the country. Maybe he was visiting. Maybe she hadn't told me. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately, and Leora stood there, smiling like nothing was out of the ordinary. She looked even more stunning in person. Taller, with a kind of effortless beauty that made you feel like she was the only thing in focus. "Hey, stranger," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I hugged her, probably a little too tightly. That window image still rattled around in my head. But her presence was grounding. Soft. Real. Inside, the house was sparse. Clean, but in a way that felt sterile. Like no one really lived there. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice casual, "your dad's here?" Leora blinked. "What?" "I saw him," I said, gesturing toward the stairs. Upstairs window. He was looking at me when I pulled up. Her face dropped. Completely dropped. Color drained from her cheeks, and her lips parted just slightly, like she was trying to process what I'd said. "My dad's not here," she whispered. "He's in Oregon. He hasn't been here in months." I laughed nervously. "Come on, don't mess with me." "I'm not," she said, grabbing my wrist. "We need to leave. Now." The tone in her voice sent a spike of panic straight through my ribs. She didn't wait for me to respond. She pulled me back toward the front door, nearly tripping over the welcome mat. I followed, adrenaline kicking in, as I tried to make sense of what the hell was happening. Once we were outside, she spun around to face the second floor. I did too. And there he was again. The man. The same man. Standing in the window, watching. But this time he looked different. Gaunter. Like he hadn't eaten in days. His eyes were sunken, yet locked onto us with terrifying clarity. Then, slowly, he stepped backward into the shadows, disappearing into the house. Leora clutched my arm. "Who the hell is that?" I asked, voice shaking. "I don't know," she said. "I swear, I don't know him. I live alone." I pulled out my phone and called the police. Leora stood behind me, silent, while I relayed what we'd seen. We waited by my car, doors locked, engine running. I kept my eyes on the house, on that upper window. But the man didn't return. When the cops arrived, 2 of them in separate cruisers, they searched the house top to bottom. They didn't find anyone, just the back door swinging open. The police left around sunset. No sign of forced entry. No man. Just the back door hanging open, swaying gently in the autumn wind like it had been waiting for something, anything, to walk through. One of the officers told us to keep the doors locked and call again if anything happened. That was it. No patrol. No lingering presence. Just 2 uniforms driving off into the trees, leaving us alone with a house that suddenly felt like it was breathing. Leora didn't want to stay alone. I didn't blame her. "Will you stay?" she asked, her voice faint, like a child asking for a nightlight. "Of course," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. We agreed to stay downstairs. The couch was old but wide enough for both of us. She brought down a blanket and a pillow, and I grabbed the shotgun her dad had left behind, an old double barrel with a dull wooden stock. I'd never fired one before, but the weight of it in my lap gave me comfort I didn't expect. We curled up together on the couch. The TV played something forgettable in the background, casting blue light across her freckled face. At some point, she fell asleep, her head on my chest, breath warm against my shirt. I couldn't sleep. My eyes kept drifting to the staircase, to the hallway, to the dark window behind the blinds. I kept the shotgun across my legs, fingers resting on the trigger guard. Nothing happened, until 2:06 a.m. At first, I thought I was imagining it, the soft click of a doorknob turning upstairs. It was faint but deliberate. Not wind. Not the house settling. It was the sound of someone trying to get in. I nudged Leora gently. She stirred but didn't wake. Then I heard it again, stronger this time. A rattle. A metal handle being tested. I stood, slowly, not taking my eyes off the ceiling. The shotgun felt heavier now. I took the stairs one step at a time, avoiding the creaky slats. Every shadow looked like it was breathing. My heart pounded so hard I wondered if the man outside could hear it. The kitchen door was glass. That thin, old-fashioned stuff that warps slightly at the edges. I flicked on the light, and that's when I saw him. He was there, just on the other side. The same man. Empty eyes. Gaunt face. Cheeks sunken like he hadn't eaten in weeks. He looked surprised to see me, like I'd interrupted something. Then, without a word, he turned and ran, back into the woods, his thin limbs vanishing between the trees like vapor. I ran back to the couch, shaking Leora awake. "He came back," I said, breathless. "I saw him. He was at the kitchen door." She didn't ask questions. She just grabbed her phone and called the police again. Another 30 minutes later, another pair of officers. This time they searched the woods too. Nothing. Not even footprints. "You two should stay somewhere else tonight," one of them finally said. "This place isn't safe." "No shit." Leora packed a bag, said she'd stay at her friend's apartment across town. She offered to let me crash there too, but I told her I needed a minute, to call my brother, clear my head, unwind before driving again. She kissed my cheek. "Be safe." "I will." She drove off into the dark, taillights glowing red until they disappeared beyond the trees. I met Eladio on a Wednesday night, but I shouldn't have been swiping. I should have made the effort and gone out with my friends. We met for a Starbucks coffee the next afternoon. My test date ritual. 40 minutes of caffeine-fueled banter to see if someone could hold a conversation without making me want to fake a phone call emergency. He showed up in a hoodie, jeans, and a smile like he'd just told a secret to someone who laughed. He wasn't overly polished, which I liked. A little undone. Real. We sat at a corner table, and I watched him stir his drink like it was a nervous habit. I found it endearing. He told me he was divorced, 2 years out. Co-parenting. Still figuring things out, he said, with this look like he was trying not to sound too tired. He brought up the kids briefly, then steered the topic back to my work. I liked that. He listened. Asked follow-ups. Didn't try to outshine me. I saw him again. Drinks this time, at a weird little bar tucked behind a used bookstore. It smelled like old paper and lemon peel. He was late, texted me 3 times apologizing, said traffic was a mess after picking up his kids. When he finally arrived, he looked flustered but still managed to smile like he meant it. I didn't mind. It made him seem grounded, like someone who actually had responsibilities. That night we talked more. Music, past trips, therapy. It felt adult, in a warm, steady sort of way. We made out in his car afterward, which I had promised myself I wouldn't do anymore, but his lips moved like he'd read the manual on kissing slowly and thoroughly. The kind of kiss that isn't just a checkpoint. It lingered, left fingerprints on my mood. Third date was sushi, my neighborhood, a place that always smelled like soy sauce and wet umbrellas. Nothing fancy, just familiar. He remembered I hated my boss and brought up a podcast I'd once mentioned in passing. The kind of details you don't expect people to remember. I started to think, maybe this is something. Then his phone buzzed. He ignored it at first. Then again. Then it rang FaceTime. He sighed and excused himself to take it. I didn't think much of it. Kids, I figured. 10 minutes passed. I watched the waitress refill my tea and start avoiding eye contact. When he came back, he looked tight, smiling, but in that way where the skin doesn't move around the eyes. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. My ex had a question about the kids, but he kept glancing at his phone like it was about to combust. Midway through me telling a story about this guy at work who eats yogurt with a fork, true horror, his phone buzzed again. This time, he flipped it over fast, but not before I caught the name on the screen. Wifey Redheart. I blinked. Thought maybe it was a joke. An old contact name he forgot to change? Then another buzz. Wifey Redheart. Message, the kids are crying. Please answer. I don't know what to tell them. My stomach folded in on itself. I didn't say anything at first. Just stared. He saw me looking. Froze. Then let out this awkward laugh and mumbled something about old habits dying hard. She's just dramatic, he said. Are you actually divorced? He didn't answer. Iladio, I said low and even. Are you still married? He looked down at his napkin. Picked at the corner like it had betrayed him. Then he said those 3 magic words that every woman knows mean run. It's complicated. What followed was a sweaty, half-mumbled confession that made my ears ring. He wasn't divorced. Not even separated. His wife thought he was away on extended business trips. She didn't even know he was dating. They had 5 children. 5. All under the age of 10. Which explained the chaos of the calls. The missed FaceTimes. The desperation in her messages. He told them he was in Chicago for work. We were 2 neighborhoods away from his house. When I asked him why lie, why put me in this position, why risk this, he said he felt trapped. That the marriage was dead. That they hadn't touched each other in years. That he needed to remember what feeling alive felt like. I didn't finish my food. I walked out, blocked his number, deleted the app again. Sat on a park bench near my place, staring at a busted street light flickering like it was trying to say something, but couldn't quite get the words out. A few days later, I got a message on Instagram. Private account. No profile picture. Just, do you know Iladio? It was her. His wife. I guess she saw my name pop up on his phone. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I felt sick just reading it. Looking back, the signs were there. The weird scheduling. The never-seen apartment. The sudden disappearing acts. But when someone looks you in the eye, holds your hand, kisses you like they mean it, you want to believe. You want to think you're building something. Turns out I was just an emotional Airbnb. Short-term lease. No deposit. No warning. I took extra time curling my hair, letting the iron linger longer on each strand than usual. The mirror caught the gleam in my eyes, nervous, maybe, but hopeful. This wasn't just any Friday night. I had a date. A real one. With someone who seemed, at least through glowing texts and flirty emojis, like a rare find. His name was Darian. We met online on Tinder a week ago. I wanted this date night we arranged to feel like something out of a movie, so I played the part. My little black dress fit like a whisper. Tight in all the right places. The heels were higher than practical, but I liked the way they made me feel, taller, braver, deliberate. I arrived at the restaurant just as the sun was bleeding into the skyline. The place glowed gold through the windows. Inside, I spotted him immediately. Darian sat at a corner table by the window, his posture relaxed, one hand casually draped over the back of the chair. His smile when he saw me was instant, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. He stood, walked toward me, and pulled me into a hug. Not too tight, not too familiar, just enough to make my heart skip. He smelled like cedar and something clean, maybe bergamot. I liked it. I liked him. "Amara," he said, my name sliding off his tongue like silk. "You're even more stunning in person." I blushed, uncharacteristically flustered. "You're not too bad yourself," I replied, trying to sound breezy. We sat, and the waiter brought a bottle of red wine, Syrah if I remember right. Darian ordered it without hesitation, flashing a sleek black card I'd only ever seen in commercials. The waiter's eyes flickered with recognition. "Get whatever you want," Darian said. "Seriously, dinner's on me. I've been looking forward to this." Over appetizers, fig and prosciutto crostini that melted on the tongue, we talked. About everything. Work, childhood, bad dates, music, travel. I laughed more in 1 hour than I had in the past month. Darian had a way of listening that made me feel fascinating, like I was something to be discovered, not just consumed. When our entrees arrived, filet mignon for him, lemon chicken piccata for me, the vibe only deepened. He watched me take my first bite with a grin. "You're adorable when you eat," he said, his gaze lingering. "I like a woman who enjoys her food." I don't know if it was the wine, the candlelight, or the way he was looking at me like I was the only person on earth, but I leaned in. I let my guard down. I told him things about my writing, my dreams to leave the city, my complicated relationship with my father. He listened, nodding, eyes intense but soft. He reached across the table once, squeezing my hand. "You feel really easy to talk to," I whispered. He smiled. "Maybe that's because I'm not playing games." I wanted to believe him. After dessert, a shared creme brulee, his idea, he suggested a walk around the neighborhood. The night was warm, the kind that makes you want to linger. I excused myself to the restroom, reapplied my lipstick with trembling fingers, and met him at the exit. We strolled arm in arm, passing boutiques and closed galleries, the city humming around us. Darian told me funny stories about his college days, pointed out places that held memories. He pulled me close when crossing the street. He made me laugh so hard I had to stop walking. Then, just as we turned down a quieter street, his phone rang. "Ugh, sorry," he said, glancing at the screen. "1 second. It's work." He stepped away, phone pressed to his ear. I leaned against a shop front, watching as his entire demeanor shifted. His shoulders tightened. His face fell. The deep, warm voice I'd fallen into all night turned clipped, serious. 1 minute passed. Then 5. I fiddled with the strap of my purse, growing cold in the breeze. 10 minutes. When he finally returned, he was already talking. "Amara, I'm so sorry. It's an emergency. I need to head back right now." I blinked. "Oh, okay, rain check?" he asked, leaning in and brushing a kiss against my cheek. "You're amazing. I'll call you tomorrow." And just like that, he walked away. No hug. No real goodbye. No explanation. I stood there, stunned, watching his tall frame disappear into the distance. I called after him once, weakly. He didn't turn around. I didn't know what to do. I wandered back to the restaurant, heart pounding. My wine glass still waited at our table, half full. The waiter returned, his friendly face dimming as he looked around. "Everything all right?" he asked gently. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Your friend said you'd be handling the bill," he added, lowering his voice. The words landed like a slap. My stomach dropped. I blinked at him, then at the table. Darian's jacket was still draped over his chair. A ghost of a presence. A prop. I swallowed hard. He left. The waiter softened. "Don't worry. We'll work something out." I explained through choked words, trying not to cry. He was kind. Covered most of the bill himself. Wrote Darian's name down somewhere discreetly. I thanked him, humiliated, mascara already smudging my cheeks. The Uber ride home blurred past neon lights and honking horns. I stared out the window, replaying every moment. Had I imagined the connection? Had it all been a performance? I texted Darian. Called. Voicemail. I kept trying until I couldn't anymore. By the time I got home, I was shaking. I peeled off my dress, let it fall to the floor, and stood in front of the mirror. I didn't look flawless anymore. I looked like a girl who'd been tricked. I crawled into bed in my oversized hoodie, the one with the frayed sleeves. I stared at the ceiling, then at my phone. No new messages. I deleted our text thread. His number. His photos. All of it. I whispered something to myself. I'm not doing this again. I'm not letting someone make me feel like nothing. But still I cried. Because I didn't just lose a date. I lost a little piece of belief. A little piece of that girl who still thought maybe, just maybe, a stranger could become something more. And I hated him for that. I've always believed in the thrill of the unknown. which is probably why Tinder never scared me the way it does some people. You meet people, you flirt, you risk a little. Sometimes it turns into something, sometimes it doesn't. But back in December of 2015, I wasn't looking for anything to commit to. Just a weekend of bad decisions and good stories. I was visiting some college friends in Bloomington, Indiana University. The snow was fresh on the ground, and the campus looked like it had been dipped in powdered sugar. It was the kind of cold that made your breath visible, your skin sting, your brain buzz just a little. We were drinking, laughing, catching up. That first night we hit a couple parties, and by the end of it, I was drunk enough to forget I wasn't 21 yet. The next morning, I woke up in a tangle of blankets on a friend's futon and checked my phone. Tinder had a couple new matches. One of them was a girl named Zelma. Not gonna lie, her profile caught me off guard. She was gorgeous. Dark curls, full lips, a nose ring. Her first photo was a mirror selfie with red LED lights behind her, and her bio was a single line. "Tell me your worst idea." I messaged her. "Driving to your place in the snow with no pants on." She replied, "I'll unlock the door." That was it. We were off. We talked most of the day, playful, sarcastic, a little dirty. She was quick with her replies, sharp with her words. That night, while my friends were pre-gaming for another party, I told them I was heading out to meet someone. "Dude, you just met her," one of them said. "I know," I grinned. "That's the point." I drove across town, following the address she gave me. It was one of those older apartment complexes, faded brick, metal banisters, a few broken porch lights. Not totally sketchy, but definitely not the kind of place you'd want to be loitering around alone after dark. When I pulled up, I texted her. "Me, here. Which door's yours?" She didn't answer right away. So I got out of the car and started walking around the building. That's when I saw it. Movement behind the blinds of one of the windows on the second floor. It was quick, just a shift of shadows, but then I looked closer and saw at least 3 people standing behind the glass watching me. Just standing there. Not talking. Not moving. I felt a chill crawl up my spine that had nothing to do with the snow. I texted her again. "Me. Think I'm at the right building. You in 2B? A moment later, she finally replied. "Zelma, front door's open. Just come in." I turned toward the main entrance. Sure enough, the door was slightly ajar, cracked open like it had been waiting for me. I hesitated. Every horror movie I'd ever seen started like this. Still, I pushed the door open. Inside, it was silent, dimly lit, with just one flickering bulb overhead. The air smelled of old carpet and something else, something faint and metallic. I reached for the light switch on the wall. Nothing. Then, from one of the apartment doors down the hall, I heard it. A voice. Low. Urgent. "Shh. He's right outside." I froze. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Suddenly things weren't adding up. That window I saw earlier, the one with the people inside, it wasn't just a neighbor's window. It was Zelma's. I knew that now. And she wasn't alone. I turned around and walked out. Not ran, walked. Like if I moved too fast, something might come after me. Once I was outside, I sprinted to my car and sped off. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely steer. I didn't stop until I was back at my friend's apartment. When I told them what had happened, they laughed. "You're being dramatic," one of them said. "Probably just her roommates messing with you. Or maybe she was actually into group stuff," another chimed in. I forced a smile, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Something wasn't right. Later that night, I was lying on the couch, trying to forget the whole thing, when my phone buzzed. "Zelma, where did you go? I've been waiting for you all night." I didn't reply. I blocked her. Round pushpin. Weeks passed. I didn't talk about it again. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't want to admit how badly it had shaken me. But then in late January, I got a message on Instagram from a random account. No profile picture. No posts. Just one DM. "You shouldn't have left." I blocked it immediately. That night, I double-locked my apartment door for the first time in years. It's strange how quickly your heart can go from numb to blazing. After my breakup, I didn't think I'd feel anything for a long time. 6 years with someone, you don't just bounce back. You drift. I spent months in that haze, barely talking to anyone unless I had to. My friends tried to pull me back into the dating pool, but I didn't have the stomach for it. I wasn't the guy who could just start swiping and find a connection again. That part of me felt broken. But loneliness has a way of wearing you down. Eventually, I downloaded Tinder, Not because I believed in it, but because I needed something. A distraction. A spark. Even a bad date would be better than sitting alone every night with leftover takeout and Netflix reruns. Most of the matches didn't go anywhere. A few shallow chats, one awkward meetup that ended with a fake work emergency and a silent, unmatched screen. I was ready to delete the app when I matched with her. Maria. She had this smile that didn't look filtered or rehearsed. Her photos weren't overly posed. One of them was her in a hoodie, hair messy, holding a cat like it was a baby. Her bio just said, "I like lakes. And secrets." I messaged her. "Okay, but do you tell them or keep them?" She replied, "Depends on who's asking." We talked for hours that first night. Then the next. She was funny, quick-witted, and had this soft, flirtatious edge that made me feel alive again. She asked questions, real ones, about my childhood, my fears, the weird dreams I kept having. No one had asked me things like that in years. After a few days, we agreed to meet in person. Maria suggested a park near the lake, one of those places with winding trails and a big pavilion where people had picnics in the summer. It was public enough to feel safe, but secluded enough to feel intimate. We set the time, 5 p.m., just after work. Early evening light, cool air, the kind of golden hour that makes everything look better than it really is. I got there first and parked near the trailhead. A few minutes later, I saw her walking toward the pavilion. It was her, the girl from the photos, real and even more disarming in person. She wore a long cardigan and boots, her hair braided loosely over one shoulder. She smiled when she saw me, and I swear, something inside me cracked open. "You're taller than I thought," she said as we hugged. "You're realer than I thought," I replied. We sat at a picnic table and talked for over an hour. The conversation flowed like we'd known each other in another life. She teased me about my flannel. I teased her about the way she pronounced bagel. There was something magnetic between us, some kind of current that pulled us closer, even as we tried to play it cool. As the sun dipped lower, she suggested we walk the trail around the lake. Normally, I'd be cautious about walking in the woods with someone I just met online, but with Maria, I didn't feel afraid. She made me feel calm, safe, even when we stepped into the shadows of the trees. We walked side by side, sometimes brushing hands, sometimes holding them. The path looped around the lake in a wide arc, with just enough moonlight breaking through the canopy to keep us from losing our way. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. We were maybe 10 minutes from the main lot when I saw someone. A man, standing dead still on the trail ahead of us, maybe 20 yards away. He wasn't moving, just watching. I stopped walking. Maria did too. "You see him?" I whispered. She nodded. "Yeah." She stepped forward and called out, "Hey, you okay?" The man didn't answer, didn't flinch. I felt the hair on my arms rise. "Let's turn around." Maria hesitated, then nodded. But just as we started backing away, the man stepped forward, and I saw it. A knife, long, reflective, held low against his thigh. "Turn around," he barked. "Hands up." I froze. My brain couldn't process it. This wasn't happening. This was a date. This was supposed to be the beginning of something beautiful. Maria looked at me, and then did something I never expected. She charged him. Without a word, she sprinted toward the man, shoulder low, moving fast. She slammed into him with everything she had, knocking him sideways into the brush. The knife clattered to the ground. "Run," she screamed. I didn't argue. I grabbed her hand as she scrambled up, and we bolted. Off the trail, through the trees, ducking branches and slipping on wet leaves. I could hear him behind us, his footsteps crashing through the woods, not even trying to be quiet. We hit the parking lot like we'd been shot out of a cannon. Maria's car was closer than mine. We dove in, slammed the doors, locked them, and peeled out. Neither of us spoke for a minute. Just gasps, shaking hands, the sound of tires on gravel. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw him, standing there, backlit by the moon, alone, watching us drive away. Round Pushpin. We called the cops once we were a few miles down the road. Told them everything. They arrived at the park within 15 minutes. The man was gone. They found the knife where he'd dropped it. No prints. No ID. Just a trail of footsteps that vanished near the edge of the woods. There had been other cars in the lot when we left, 3, maybe 4, but when the police arrived, only mine was still there. We gave our statements. Maria's hands were still trembling. My voice cracked more than once. But the officers were kind. They took it seriously. Afterward, we didn't want to go home. Neither of us wanted to be alone. We found a 24-hour diner and sat in a booth until sunrise, talking about everything. What had just happened, what could have happened. How close we came to something we didn't even have a name for. I remember her reaching across the table to touch my hand. "I've never done anything like that," she whispered. "You saved me," I said. We smiled, but there was something behind it. Something raw. There's a strange confidence that comes with wearing a badge. When I first joined the force at 21, I felt it immediately, that low hum of invincibility. The quiet belief that I could handle anything, anyone. That I was the one who would run toward the danger, not away from it. But that was before Sivya. Before the field. Before I learned that sometimes, being trained doesn't make you ready. I had just come off a difficult breakup when I downloaded Tinder. The app felt like a lifeline, something to distract me from the silence that waited every time I walked into my apartment. I wasn't looking for love, just connection. A pulse. That's when I matched with her. Sivya. She was stunning in a way that didn't make sense. Long black hair, sharp cheekbones, this piercing look that made it feel like she already knew your secrets. Her bio was short. "Come watch the stars with me." I messaged her something stupid. She replied with something smarter. We clicked immediately. Over the next few days, we talked constantly. She was flirtatious, but not desperate. Confident. She told me she lived a little outside of town, on her family's property, and that her favorite thing was to lie in the field behind the house and stare at the sky. "You'd like it," she told me. "No noise. Just the stars. Just us." We agreed to meet on a Friday night. I picked her up just after 9. She slid into the passenger seat wearing a black hoodie and jeans, casual but magnetic. She smelled like cardamom and cigarette smoke. I told her it suited her. She smiled but said nothing. She directed me down a long dirt road, past rusted gates and fields dotted with tall grass. The moon was out, full and bright, casting silver across everything. It was the kind of night that made you believe something important was about to happen. When we got to the field, I parked by the edge of the woods. It was quiet, isolated, almost too perfect. She led me to a blanket she'd laid out earlier. We lay down, shoulder to shoulder, staring at the sky. For a while, it was everything she promised. Beautiful. Still. We talked about meaningless things, bad dates, old songs, the way time seems to stretch when you're happy. I felt myself relax in a way I hadn't in months. Then I saw it. Headlights. Distant at first, but moving toward us, slow, deliberate. A van, creeping along the edge of the field. I sat up. "You expecting someone?" Sivya looked confused. "No." The van kept coming. No sign of stopping. It was lined up head-on with my truck, like it intended to block us in. "Stay here," I told her. My voice was too firm. Too practiced. My cop voice. I walked toward the van, hand instinctively brushing over the concealed pistol under my flannel. The driver rolled down the window. A man sat there. Mid-50s. Big. His face was round but tight, like a balloon about to pop. "Evenin'," he said, voice low, almost friendly. "This is private property." "I figured," I said. She told me it was her family's place. He glanced past me toward Sivya. "You know her?" "I do." He nodded slowly. "We've had trouble lately. Poachers. Weirdos. Just making sure everything's okay." I didn't relax. "We're just here to stargaze." He smiled, nodded again, and drove off. No threat. No escalation. Just gone. But when I returned to the blanket, something was different. Sivya was on her phone. Texting. Rapidly. I sat down beside her. "Who are you talking to?" She didn't answer. "Sivya." She looked up, her expression unreadable. I just got nervous. I didn't believe her. But I didn't push it. Not yet. We sat in silence, our backs to the sky. An hour passed. Then the headlights returned. Same van. Faster this time. I jumped to my feet, heart pounding. The van skidded to a stop inches from my front bumper, blocking any escape. Sivya didn't hesitate. She ran toward the van. I watched her climb into the passenger seat like she'd done it 100 times. That's when it clicked. The whole thing was a setup. I pulled the pistol from my belt and moved toward the van. "Out. Now," I said, voice sharp. The man opened the door and stepped out, hands raised. "Whoa. Easy." On the ground. Sivya followed slowly. She wasn't scared. She wasn't confused. Just watching. Then she said something I'll never forget. "He's got money. He's a cop. We can't let him leave." The man, Bob, I learned later, lunged at me. I fired once into the dirt beside his foot. He stopped, but Sivya didn't. She reached into the van and pulled out a metal pipe. "Drop it!" I yelled. She didn't. "Drop it!" She paused. Then, as if something broke inside her, she started crying. "We don't want to hurt you. Just give us the truck. The cash. You'll walk away." I raised the gun. "Last chance." Bob grabbed her. "Let's go." They ran, into the trees, into the dark. I didn't chase them. I called it in. When my sergeant arrived, he rolled his eyes. "You called us?" "I was off duty," I said. He laughed. "You are the police." But the joke didn't last. Because when we searched the van, we found more than a pipe. Inside were handcuffs, a bottle of lighter fluid, a stained blanket, duct tape, a hunting knife, and an AR-15, partially disassembled in the back. There were bloodstains on the passenger seat. Old. Dried. My sergeant didn't laugh after that. I never saw Sivya again. Her profile vanished the next day. Bob was never caught. The van was reported stolen from a town 3 hours away. The plates were fake. The gun had no serial number. I met Kale on a Tuesday. He wasn't my usual type. His photos weren't overly polished. One showed him in a faded hoodie, another holding a dog that looked like it hated him. But his eyes, there was something about them. Calm. A little mischievous. Like he knew more than he let on. His first message was simple. Red or white? I answered. Depends on who's pouring. We clicked fast. He was funny, dry, and asked thoughtful questions. Not just the usual Tinder small talk. He wanted to know what books I read, what I dreamed about, what I did when no one was looking. For our first 2 dates, we kept it light. Coffee. A walk by the river. Nothing intense. But the chemistry was there, undeniable, simmering just beneath the surface. When he touched my wrist lightly while laughing, I felt it in my stomach. When he looked at me too long, I forgot what I was saying. So when he invited me over to his place for wine on our 3rd date, I said yes. I didn't even hesitate. His house was quiet. Clean. Too clean, maybe, but I wasn't looking for red flags. I was looking at him. The way his shirt clung to his chest. The way he poured the wine without asking. The way he watched me as I took that first sip. We sat on his couch, the lights low, music playing softly from a speaker in the corner. It was one of those nights that felt scripted. Warm. Private. Charged. We talked about nothing and everything, bad dates, old friendships, what we'd do if we could disappear for a week. He leaned in close when I spoke, eyes locked on mine. I remember thinking, I could fall for this guy. The wine was smooth. Sweet. Just a little too sweet. About 20 minutes in, I started to feel it. Not drunk. Not tipsy. Heavy. My arms felt like they belonged to someone else. My head buzzed, not in a warm way, but like I was underwater. I blinked too slowly. My words started to tangle together. And suddenly I knew. I knew what this was. At a party during sophomore year, I had been roofied. It had only taken 15 minutes then, and the symptoms were exactly the same. That sinking, syrupy gravity pulling me toward unconsciousness. Panic hit me hard, but I didn't show it. I smiled. I laughed at something stupid he said. I asked if I could use the bathroom. He smiled back, casual. Down the hall, to the left. I stood, legs wobbling beneath me like stilts on ice. I made it to the bathroom and locked the door with shaking fingers. My hands were already going numb. I pulled out my phone and called 911. "Help," I whispered. "I've been drugged. I'm in a house. I don't know what's going to happen." They asked for the address. I gave it. Barely. They told me to stay where I was and keep the door locked. Then everything went dark. I woke up in flashes. Voices. Lights. Hands carrying me. A bag over my head. At first I panicked, thinking it was Kale moving me, hiding me. But then I heard the radios. The urgent, calm voices. Police. They were the ones who carried me out. I don't remember how long I was unconscious. Maybe an hour. Maybe more. But I remember waking up fully in the hospital, with a saline drip in my arm and a detective at the end of my bed. Her name was Agent Rivas. She looked tired but sharp. "You're safe," she said. I asked her about the bag. She hesitated, then said, "We didn't want you to see what was in the living room." 3 days later, I went to the station to make my statement. I asked what they'd found. Rivas looked at me for a long time before answering. "There were preparations. Things he'd set up in the room for you. You don't need to know what they were. But trust me, it's better that you didn't see." I think about that often. What would I have seen if I hadn't locked that bathroom door? What did Cale have planned? He's in jail now, awaiting trial, facing multiple charges. They found more than just drugs in his house. They found photos, notes, a journal. I was not supposed to be his first, but I was the first to get out. When you've been alone long enough, your standards start to shift. I don't mean that in a self-deprecating way. I mean it honestly. You stop looking for sparks and fireworks. You just want someone to look at you and mean it. Someone who replies to your messages without making you wait. Someone who sees you. That's what I thought I found in Talitha. She was different from most of my matches. Her profile didn't have bikini shots or cryptic one-liners. We conversed for a week before she mentioned the cabin. It belonged to her family, she said, tucked away in the hills north of the city. No neighbors for miles. No cell towers either. It's kind of like stepping outside time, she told me. You should come up next weekend. I'll make soup. We'll watch the storm. Part of me hesitated. The logical part. The part that had heard too many stories. But the way she said it, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt like an escape, and I needed one. So I said yes. Round Pushpin. The drive out was long, 2 hours through winding mountain roads, then another half hour on narrow dirt paths that looked like they hadn't been used in months. By the time I reached the cabin, the sun was sinking low, painting the treetops orange and gold. The cabin was beautiful. 2 stories. Log-built. A porch that creaked under my boots and wide windows that reflected the deepening sky. Talitha opened the door before I could knock. She was barefoot, wearing a black sweater and leggings. Her hair was loose, falling in waves around her shoulders. "You made it," she said, sounding genuinely pleased. She hugged me, warm and close, and for a moment, all my nerves melted away. Round Pushpin. Inside, the cabin smelled like cedar and cinnamon. A small fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The soup was already simmering. She handed me a cup of something hot, herbal, maybe chamomile, and we sat on the couch, close but not touching. We talked. About books. Music. The way the world feels quieter when it's far away. She told me she'd been burned before. That she wasn't good at big social scenes. That most people didn't really see her. "You see me though," she said, looking at me with those pale, unreadable eyes. "I do," I told her. And I meant it. Round Pushpin. After dinner, the storm came. Not loud, just a steady, rhythmic tapping of rain on the roof. Thunder in the distance. Everything felt slow, gentle. I was leaning back on the couch, half listening to her read a poem aloud, when she moved closer. Her legs touched mine, then her hand, then her lips. The kiss was slow, intentional, like she'd been waiting all night to decide if I deserved it. We kissed for a long time, her hands moving to my collar, her breath warm against my cheek. There was a tension in it, a hunger. But just as things started to heat up, just as my hand slid under her sweater, she pulled away. "Not yet," she said softly. "Let's play a game first." Round Pushpin. She stood and walked to the fireplace, where she picked up a small wooden box. Inside were slips of paper. "Questions," she explained. "Truth only. No lies." I agreed. She pulled the first one. "Have you ever hurt someone you loved?" The air shifted. I swallowed. "Yeah. Not on purpose. But yeah." She nodded, as if expecting that answer. I pulled one. "What's your biggest fear?" She smiled. "Being forgotten." Then her turn again. "Would you be able to hurt someone if they deserved it?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "Define deserved," I said. She didn't answer. Just watched me. Round Pushpin. The game went on, each question darker than the last. "Have you ever wanted to disappear? Would you help someone cover up a crime? If I asked, would you stay here forever?" I laughed at that last one, but she didn't. "I'm serious," she said. I looked around the room. The windows. The door. The fire. Something began to twist in my gut. "Talitha," I said carefully, "is this cabin really your family's?" She tilted. "A few years ago, I did something really stupid. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I made a choice that could have cost me my life. And even now, every time I think about it, I get that tight, horrible feeling in my chest. Like I can still feel the cold air on my skin, the rising bile of panic, the sound of tires crunching gravel where no other cars should be. I had arranged to meet a guy from Tinder. His name was Brendan. A pretty normal name for someone who, up until then, seemed like a pretty normal guy. We had been messaging back and forth for a few weeks. Nothing too intense, just casual, flirty conversation. He seemed kind enough. Polite. He didn't come on too strong, which I liked. I have anxiety around driving, especially in unfamiliar areas, so I made the naive decision to have him pick me up outside my place. Yes, that was the first mistake. A big one. I know that now. But I was in a vulnerable place. I was lonely, convinced that maybe this time would be different. That maybe I could just go on a nice date, have some sushi, and distract myself from the messiness of life. Brendan pulled up right on time in a silver hatchback. He waved, smiled, and I got in. He was clean-cut, smelled nice, and had that slightly awkward, fumbling charm that made him seem harmless. I exhaled, trying to relax. We made small talk as he typed the name of the sushi place into his GPS. It was a restaurant I'd heard good things about, nestled in the heart of a nearby town. As we set off, everything seemed fine at first. We chatted about music, movies, the usual first date fluff. But after maybe 20 minutes, I noticed the scenery changing. Subtly at first, fewer houses, fewer cars, more trees. Then it was obvious. We were in the woods, like proper backcountry dirt roads and thick trees pressing in on both sides. There was no cell signal, no landmarks, just winding roads and the sound of the car's engine cutting through otherwise oppressive silence. I tried to keep my voice light, though my stomach had dropped. Are we still heading to the sushi place? Brendan glanced at the GPS, then gave me a sheepish look. Yeah, I swear. This is just the fastest route. The GPS must have picked a shortcut. I nodded, but something in his tone didn't sit right. His voice was tight, defensive, like he was trying to convince himself, too. Can we just head back to the main road? I asked, trying to sound calm. This feels off. He chuckled nervously. I know, right? I was thinking the same thing. This is creepy. Don't worry, I'll get us back to civilization. But I didn't feel reassured. I glanced at his hands on the wheel. They were gripping it tightly, knuckles pale. There was sweat on his forehead, despite the chill from the car's AC. I must have looked pale myself because he kept glancing at me, then back at the road. I swear I'm not doing anything weird, he said suddenly, voice cracking just a little. I'm just following the GPS. That made it worse. Who says that unprompted? I pulled out my phone, instinctively wanting to check the map myself, but of course, no signal. None at all. Brendan noticed and said, too casually, yeah, there's no signal out here, love. It was that word, love, that made my blood run cold. It felt too familiar, too sudden, like he was trying to comfort me in a moment that didn't call for it. My fingers started to tingle, cold and clammy, while sweat beaded at the back of my neck. I tried to steady my breathing. I smiled weakly, tried to keep the panic from showing. I didn't want him to know I was afraid, even though I was absolutely terrified. I forced a laugh and said, well, I hope we don't end up in a horror movie. He laughed too, a short, clipped sound. Yeah, that would suck. Eventually, mercifully, we pulled into a small parking lot next to the sushi place. It looked normal. Busy even. There were other people, lights, the clinking of dishes from inside. I had never been so relieved in my life. But I was also confused, because when I later took an Uber home from that exact same restaurant, the drive only took 15 minutes. Brendan had taken me on a nearly hour-long detour through the woods. I didn't say anything in the moment. I was too shaken. I was physically trembling, but I tried to hide it as we walked inside. My appetite was gone, but I forced myself to eat a few pieces of sashimi, nodding along to his small talk. And just when I thought the weirdest part of the night had passed, Brendan leaned in closer, his eyes scanning my face. So, he said, when do you think we'll be able to do it? I blinked. What? You know, how long until you'd sleep with me? A day? A week? A month? I stared at him, stunned. He smiled, like he'd just asked a perfectly reasonable question. I mean, I just don't want to waste time if it's going to take too long. I can't wait a whole month. I'm just telling you now. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My brain was still processing the fact that I'd just been dragged through the woods by a stranger who now seemed to think I was on some sort of sexual countdown timer. The rest of the date was excruciatingly awkward. I stayed polite. I smiled. I took an Uber home and made sure he didn't follow me. The moment my Uber pulled out of the restaurant parking lot, Brendan messaged me. I don't think this is going to work. I need someone with a higher libido. I didn't argue. I just texted back, okay. But I couldn't stop thinking about the drive. Why had he taken me so far out of the way? Why the woods? Why did he seem nervous, sweaty, unsettled? Why did he comment on his GPS not working, and then follow it anyway? And why, when I tried to find the same route we'd taken that night, couldn't I replicate it? None of it made sense. I never thought a stupid paper cut could feel like a betrayal until that night. It was Friday. I'd been messaging Mark for a couple weeks. He said about going for an artsy diner downtown, and I said yes without hesitation. I wanted something easy. I didn't expect anything that would make me keep my keys in my fist on the walk to my car. The place had a low-budget cool vibe, mismatched chairs, a waitress with impossibly dark lipstick, and walls crowded with framed, baffling modern art. Mark showed up in scuffed boots and a leather jacket that looked like it had earned its own backstory. He smiled like a man who'd practiced smiling without showing his teeth. At first he was charming in a way that felt safe, thoughtful questions, a laugh that hit the right beats. He reached across the table to fold the napkin when my water glass left a ring. He seemed careful with small things. I liked that, even as the city outside got louder and lamps flickered. Then I noticed the cut. Tiny, a paper slice from earlier that day, red and angry against the skin of my right hand. I winced and dabbed it with a napkin. Mark did something I wouldn't blame anyone for calling sweet. He folded another napkin and, gentle as a practiced caretaker, dabbed the cut for me. The touch was precise, like he'd done it 100 times on elbows and knees and other people's soft parts. It felt intimate, the sort of contact that makes your pulse do a little irregular thing. He folded the napkin again when he was done and, without fanfare, slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. He didn't make a show of it. He didn't wink or joke. He just smoothed the jacket like it was routine. I blinked and let it go because I wanted to like him. We talked. Bands. Some past concerts where my voice still remembers the bass line. He listened hard enough to make me forget, for a few minutes, the napkin in his pocket. Halfway through dinner, the tone shifted. Not abruptly, like a slow dial turning down. He started asking oddly specific questions. What time did you get back from work today? Did you eat anything different for lunch? Do you keep your windows open? Little things. Mundane things. When he spoke about it, it was with this soft conviction, like he'd stumbled across a truth and decided I should know. He told me he believed objects hold energy. Not in a spooky way, he said, smiling in that way that didn't reach his eyes. In an attuned way. A scrap of tissue, hair, a button. They carry a trace. He explained it like he expected me to be impressed. I laughed, the way you do when someone leans too far into their personal lore. But his eyes didn't leave mine. He said, "It helps me know people. It helps me know if we're compatible. There are better scripts for flirting." This was not one of them. When he reached into his pocket to fondle the napkin, folding it, smoothing it like a rosary, the laugh I'd been holding dissolved into something thin and brittle. He whispered something about being calibrated, about resonance, and the room shrank until it was only our table and the soft clack of utensils. I wanted to tell him to stop. I wanted to stand and leave and call someone ridiculous like my sister. But there's a weird social inertia on dates. You don't want to make a scene. You don't want to be the person who overreacts. I chose decorum in the moment and paid for both of us with my peace of mind. He got closer when he talked about how he collects things, old concert tickets, shirts that smell like a place, napkins that touched a person. He said it like he was describing stamps or coins. The meal blurred. I ate more out of habit than hunger and noticed how his thumbs traced the napkin's seam as if memorizing punctuation. At one point, his hand grazed my knee under the table. It was casual, and then not. It felt like a test. How would I react? I let the contact happen, and then I flinched inward, the kind of internal recoil that makes you speak in clipped sentences until the moment passes. When the check came, I paid and said I had an early morning. He nodded, that steady smile back in place, like he hadn't just cataloged a part of me into his pocket. Outside the diner, the air was cold in a way that made my spine prick. I walked faster than necessary to my car, locked the doors, and sat for a minute with both hands on the steering wheel, the image of him with the napkin folding itself into my head like some small, terrible ritual. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured him unfolding the napkin, holding my blood like a specimen. It seemed ridiculous and yet intimate enough to feel violating. The napkin was nothing, and the napkin had become everything. The next morning there was a hairline scratch along the edge of my phone case that hadn't been there before. I ran my finger along it until the skin of the pad of my thumb burned. Coincidence, I told myself. Or maybe the scratch had been there and I hadn't noticed. But after Mark's slow obsession, it felt like a tag, proof that he'd been closer to my world than he had any right to be. My name's Plibble, and I want to start this off by saying I'm not proud of what you're about to read. Actually, scratch that. I'm mortified. But if I don't tell the whole story, you're just going to think I'm some gullible buffoon with the brain power of a turnip. Which, to be fair, might not be far off. For 4 months, I thought I was talking to this gorgeous girl named Kazmira. She was 19, said she worked as a cleaner, and told me she'd just graduated. Meanwhile, I'm 24, working in IT support, and have the romantic experience of a block of unsalted butter. Never kissed a girl. Never dated anyone. Never even held hands with someone who wasn't related to me. I met Kazmira, met, on Tinder. We matched on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and I remember thinking, finally, the gods of digital romance have thrown me a bone. I didn't ask for much. Just someone to talk to, maybe watch a movie with, and eventually someone to hold hands with awkwardly while sweating profusely. Our conversation started off pretty normal. She said she liked horror movies and pineapple on pizza. Red flag, I know. And she said she had a pet ferret named Slush. I was hooked. Who wouldn't be? A girl with a weird pet and a bright smile? Count me in. After chatting daily for about 3 months, I started to feel like she was the one. I imagined our future, us buying a house, raising ferrets, maybe even naming our first child Bluetooth as a joke. I know that sounds insane, but I was in deep in a fantasy that I didn't realize was being scripted by someone else entirely. Things started to get weird on a Friday night. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through old messages, wondering if I should finally ask Kazmira out. I was terrified. I'd never been on a date before, so in my head I was like, do I say, want to go to a cafe? Or is that too basic? Should I suggest bowling? Is bowling romantic? Before I could overthink myself into a coma, she messaged me. Hey, what are you currently doing? I assumed she meant work or hobbies, so I responded vaguely, just doing some revision and project stuff for work. She replied with a bunch of laughing emojis. No, silly. I mean, what are you doing right now? Like, physically. This was the first real red flag. I remember squinting at the screen like, wait, what? I told her I was lying on my bed. She immediately started sending messages that got weird. I just got out of the shower, she wrote. Wish you were here to dry me off. I didn't know what to say. I'd never sexted before. Heck, I'd never even flirted successfully. But she kept pushing. Send me a pic face blowing a kiss, she wrote. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the camera icon, like it was a detonator. Then she sent a photo. It was of her, or someone I thought was her, wrapped in a towel, with the towel accidentally slipping off. My brain short-circuited. I was like, okay, this is happening. This is real. I'm in an adult situation now. I sent a photo back. I won't go into details, but let's just say it wasn't PG-13. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was ashamed, at least not yet, but because I felt euphoric. For the first time, I felt like someone wanted me. Like, actually wanted me. I was addicted to that feeling. The next few days, we messaged constantly. I gave her my phone number, started telling her about my family, my job, even the weird mole on my left shoulder that looks like a tiny Abraham Lincoln. I trusted this girl with everything. Then, the second red flag hit me like a sock full of pennies. One day she messaged, haha, I love that green fire hydrant on your street. It's so quirky. I froze. The fire hydrant on my street had been painted green by some neighborhood kid as a prank. It wasn't public knowledge, and I sure as heck hadn't mentioned it to her. That's when the paranoia kicked in. I live on a cul-de-sac. One way in, one way out. It's not a street you just pass through. For her to know about that fire hydrant, she had to have seen it herself. Maybe she drove by after I gave her my street name? I told myself, but that didn't sit right either. Who drives to a random guy's street just to look at a fire hydrant and not even say hi? I stopped messaging her for a few days. I kept looking out my window, half expecting her, or someone, to be watching me. But then came the flood of messages. Hey, what's wrong? Hey, can we talk? Hey, wanna have fun again? Smiling face with horns. Hey, I miss you. I was torn. Part of me, a dumb, hormone-fueled part, still believed she was real. That maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. So I decided to test her. Hey, can we do a video call tonight? I asked. No reply. For 4 days. That was unheard of. Kazmira always replied within minutes. Now nothing. Finally, she responded. Haha, maybe tomorrow. I'm just super busy with my studies, grinning face with sweat. I knew it. Something was up. She was dodging the call. I pressed harder. Look, if we don't video call soon, I'm blocking you. Please don't play me. I really like you. That got her attention. Okay, but I'm super shy. Please be kind, she wrote. I scheduled the call for the next night. My heart was pounding. This was it. The moment of truth. I called her on WhatsApp. The phone rang and rang and rang. Finally, someone picked up, but the camera was covered, just a reddish blur, like someone had their thumb over the lens. Hey, are you there? I asked. No reply. Just heavy, wheezy breathing. Hello? I tried again. Kazmira? Then the thumb moved. I nearly vomited. Staring back at me wasn't a 19-year-old girl with a ferret and a towel. It was Mr. Dargle, my 94-year-old neighbor. The guy who lives 3 houses down. My jaw hit the floor. I hung up immediately and threw my phone across the room like it was cursed. Every message suddenly felt dirty. Every photo I'd sent felt like evidence in a criminal investigation. I wanted to scrub my brain clean with bleach. I blocked every contact, deleted every message. I even threw out the hoodie I was wearing that first night we sexted. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I called into work sick and spent the whole day under my blanket, trying not to scream. And Mr. Dargle? That creepy fossil had seen everything. I couldn't stay on that street. Every time I walked outside, I felt like the bushes were laughing at me. 1 week later, I packed up everything, sold the house at a loss, and moved across town. I never looked back. I still can't look a fire hydrant in the eye. My name's Plibble, and I want to start this off by saying I'm not proud of what you're about to read. Actually, scratch that. I'm mortified. But if I don't tell the whole story, you're just going to think I'm some gullible buffoon with the brain power of a turnip. Which, to be fair, might not be far off. For 4 months, I thought I was talking to this gorgeous girl named Kazmira. She was 19, said she worked as a cleaner, and told me she'd just graduated. Meanwhile, I'm 24, working in IT support, and have the romantic experience of a block of unsalted butter. Never kissed a girl. Never dated anyone. Never even held hands with someone who wasn't related to me. I met Kazmira, met, on Tinder. We matched on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and I remember thinking, finally, the gods of digital romance have thrown me a bone. I didn't ask for much. Just someone to talk to, maybe watch a movie with, and eventually someone to hold hands with awkwardly while sweating profusely. Our conversation started off pretty normal. She said she liked horror movies and pineapple on pizza. Red flag, I know. And she said she had a pet ferret named Slush. I was hooked. Who wouldn't be? A girl with a weird pet and a bright smile? Count me in. After chatting daily for about 3 months, I started to feel like she was the one. I imagined our future, us buying a house, raising ferrets, maybe even naming our first child Bluetooth as a joke. I know that sounds insane, but I was in deep in a fantasy that I didn't realize was being scripted by someone else entirely. Things started to get weird on a Friday night. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through old messages, wondering if I should finally ask Kazmira out. I was terrified. I'd never been on a date before, so in my head I was like, do I say, want to go to a cafe? Or is that too basic? Should I suggest bowling? Is bowling romantic? Before I could overthink myself into a coma, she messaged me. Hey, what are you currently doing? I assumed she meant work or hobbies, so I responded vaguely, just doing some revision and project stuff for work. She replied with a bunch of laughing emojis. No, silly. I mean, what are you doing right now? Like, physically. This was the first real red flag. I remember squinting at the screen like, wait, what? I told her I was lying on my bed. She immediately started sending messages that got weird. I just got out of the shower, she wrote. Wish you were here to dry me off. I didn't know what to say. I'd never sexted before. Heck, I'd never even flirted successfully. But she kept pushing. Send me a pic face blowing a kiss, she wrote. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the camera icon, like it was a detonator. Then she sent a photo. It was of her, or someone I thought was her, wrapped in a towel, with the towel accidentally slipping off. My brain short-circuited. I was like, okay, this is happening. This is real. I'm in an adult situation now. I sent a photo back. I won't go into details, but let's just say it wasn't PG-13. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was ashamed, at least not yet, but because I felt euphoric. For the first time, I felt like someone wanted me. Like, actually wanted me. I was addicted to that feeling. The next few days, we messaged constantly. I gave her my phone number, started telling her about my family, my job, even the weird mole on my left shoulder that looks like a tiny Abraham Lincoln. I trusted this girl with everything. Then, the second red flag hit me like a sock full of pennies. One day she messaged, "Haha, I love that green fire hydrant on your street. It's so quirky." I froze. The fire hydrant on my street had been painted green by some neighborhood kid as a prank. It wasn't public knowledge, and I sure as heck hadn't mentioned it to her. That's when the paranoia kicked in. I live on a cul-de-sac. One way in, one way out. It's not a street you just pass through. For her to know about that fire hydrant, she had to have seen it herself. Maybe she drove by after I gave her my street name? I told myself, but that didn't sit right either. Who drives to a random guy's street just to look at a fire hydrant and not even say hi? I stopped messaging her for a few days. I kept looking out my window, half expecting her, or someone, to be watching me. But then came the flood of messages. "Hey, what's wrong? Hey, can we talk? Hey, wanna have fun again? Smiling face with horns. Hey, I miss you." I was torn. Part of me, a dumb, hormone-fueled part, still believed she was real. That maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. So I decided to test her. "Hey, can we do a video call tonight?" I asked. No reply. For 4 days. That was unheard of. Kazmira always replied within minutes. Now nothing. Finally, she responded. "Haha, maybe tomorrow. I'm just super busy with my studies," grinning face with sweat. I knew it. Something was up. She was dodging the call. I pressed harder. "Look, if we don't video call soon, I'm blocking you. Please don't play me. I really like you." That got her attention. "Okay, but I'm super shy. Please be kind," she wrote. I scheduled the call for the next night. My heart was pounding. This was it. The moment of truth. I called her on WhatsApp. The phone rang and rang and rang. Finally, someone picked up. But the camera was covered. Just a reddish blur, like someone had their thumb over the lens. "Hey, are you there?" I asked. No reply. Just heavy, wheezy breathing. "Hello?" I tried again. "Kazmira?" Then the thumb moved. I nearly vomited. Staring back at me wasn't a 19-year-old girl with a ferret and a towel. It was Mr. Dargle, my 94-year-old neighbor. The guy who lives 3 houses down. My jaw hit the floor. I hung up immediately and threw my phone across the room like it was cursed. Every message suddenly felt dirty. Every photo I'd sent felt like evidence in a criminal investigation. I wanted to scrub my brain clean with bleach. I blocked every contact. Deleted every message. I even threw out the hoodie I was wearing that first night we sexted. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I called into work sick and spent the whole day under my blanket, trying not to scream. And Mr. Dargle? That creepy fossil had seen everything. I couldn't stay on that street. Every time I walked outside, I felt like the bushes were laughing at me. 1 week later, I packed up everything, sold the house at a loss, and moved across town. I never looked back. I still can't look a fire hydrant in the eye. My name's Plibble, and I want to start this off by saying I'm not proud of what you're about to read. Actually, scratch that. I'm mortified. But if I don't tell the whole story, you're just going to think I'm some gullible buffoon with the brain power of a turnip. Which, to be fair, might not be far off. For 4 months, I thought I was talking to this gorgeous girl named Kazmira. She was 19, said she worked as a cleaner, and told me she'd just graduated. Meanwhile, I'm 24, working in IT support, and have the romantic experience of a block of unsalted butter. Never kissed a girl. Never dated anyone. Never even held hands with someone who wasn't related to me. I met Kazmira, met, on Tinder. We matched on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and I remember thinking, finally, the gods of digital romance have thrown me a bone. I didn't ask for much. Just someone to talk to, maybe watch a movie with, and eventually someone to hold hands with awkwardly while sweating profusely. Our conversation started off pretty normal. She said she liked horror movies and pineapple on pizza. Red flag, I know. And she said she had a pet ferret named Slush. I was hooked. Who wouldn't be? A girl with a weird pet and a bright smile? Count me in. After chatting daily for about 3 months, I started to feel like she was the one. I imagined our future, us buying a house, raising ferrets, maybe even naming our first child Bluetooth as a joke. I know that sounds insane, but I was in deep in a fantasy that I didn't realize was being scripted by someone else entirely. Things started to get weird on a Friday night. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through old messages, wondering if I should finally ask Kazmira out. I was terrified. I'd never been on a date before, so in my head I was like, Do I say, "Want to go to a cafe?" Or is that too basic? Should I suggest bowling? Is bowling romantic? Before I could overthink myself into a coma, she messaged me. "Hey, what are you currently doing?" I assumed she meant work or hobbies, so I responded vaguely, "Just doing some revision and project stuff for work." She replied with a bunch of laughing emojis. "No, silly. I mean, what are you doing right now? Like, physically?" This was the first real red flag. I remember squinting at the screen like, "Wait, what?" I told her I was lying on my bed. She immediately started sending messages that got weird. "I just got out of the shower," she wrote. "Wish you were here to dry me off." I didn't know what to say. I'd never sexted before. Heck, I'd never even flirted successfully. But she kept pushing. "Send me a pic face blowing a kiss," she wrote. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the camera icon, like it was a detonator. Then she sent a photo. It was of her, or someone I thought was her, wrapped in a towel, with the towel accidentally slipping off. My brain short-circuited. I was like, okay, this is happening. This is real. I'm in an adult situation now. I sent a photo back. I won't go into details, but let's just say it wasn't PG-13. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was ashamed, at least not yet, but because I felt euphoric. For the first time, I felt like someone wanted me. Like, actually wanted me. I was addicted to that feeling. The next few days, we messaged constantly. I gave her my phone number, started telling her about my family, my job, even the weird mole on my left shoulder that looks like a tiny Abraham Lincoln. I trusted this girl with everything. Then, the second red flag hit me like a sock full of pennies. One day she messaged, "Haha, I love that green fire hydrant on your street. It's so quirky." I froze. The fire hydrant on my street had been painted green by some neighborhood kid as a prank. It wasn't public knowledge, and I sure as heck hadn't mentioned it to her. That's when the paranoia kicked in. I live on a cul-de-sac. One way in, one way out. It's not a street you just pass through. For her to know about that fire hydrant, she had to have seen it herself. Maybe she drove by after I gave her my street name? I told myself, but that didn't sit right either. Who drives to a random guy's street just to look at a fire hydrant and not even say hi? I stopped messaging her for a few days. I kept looking out my window, half expecting her, or someone, to be watching me. But then came the flood of messages. "Hey, what's wrong? Hey, can we talk? Hey, wanna have fun again? Smiling face with horns. Hey, I miss you." I was torn. Part of me, a dumb, hormone-fueled part, still believed she was real. That maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. So I decided to test her. "Hey, can we do a video call tonight?" I asked. No reply. For 4 days. That was unheard of. Kazmira always replied within minutes. Now nothing. Finally, she responded. "Haha, maybe tomorrow. I'm just super busy with my studies," grinning face with sweat. I knew it. Something was up. She was dodging the call. I pressed harder. "Look, if we don't video call soon, I'm blocking you. Please don't play me. I really like you." That got her attention. "Okay, but I'm super shy. Please be kind," she wrote. I scheduled the call for the next night. My heart was pounding. This was it. The moment of truth. I called her on WhatsApp. The phone rang and rang and rang. Finally, someone picked up. But the camera was covered. Just a reddish blur, like someone had their thumb over the lens. "Hey, are you there?" I asked. No reply. Just heavy, wheezy breathing. "Hello?" I tried again. "Kazmira?" Then the thumb moved. I nearly vomited. Staring back at me wasn't a 19-year-old girl with a ferret and a towel. It was Mr. Dargle, my 94-year-old neighbor. The guy who lives 3 houses down. My jaw hit the floor. I hung up immediately and threw my phone across the room like it was cursed. Every message suddenly felt dirty. Every photo I'd sent felt like evidence in a criminal investigation. I wanted to scrub my brain clean with bleach. I blocked every contact. Deleted every message. I even threw out the hoodie I was wearing that first night we sexted. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I called into work sick and spent the whole day under my blanket, trying not to scream. And Mr. Dargle? That creepy fossil had seen everything. I couldn't stay on that street. Every time I walked outside, I felt like the bushes were laughing at me. 1 week later, I packed up everything, sold the house at a loss, and moved across town. I never looked back. I still can't look a fire hydrant in the eye. I deserved everything that happened to me. Every bruise, every sleepless night, every ounce of shame that still hits me at 2 a.m. while I stare at the ceiling, and wish I could start over. But let's rewind. My name's Grimbly. I'm 27, and for a while, I was what you'd call a professional Tinder con artist. I didn't wear a ski mask or break into houses. Nah, I was more subtle than that. My weapon of choice? Sympathy. I wasn't some rich guy playing games for fun. I was broke. Like, ramen for dinner 5 nights a week and stealing toilet paper from work broke. I lived in a studio apartment that smelled like mold and regret, and I had a negative balance in my bank account more often than not. But I had a gift. I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to make them feel seen, heard, special. So I crafted my Tinder persona, a down-on-his-luck guy with a soft heart and a tragic backstory. I kept it vague, just lost my job at a startup trying to get back on my feet, and let their imaginations do the rest. Most of the time, it worked. I'd match with kind-hearted women, the nurturing types, the ones who posted quotes about healing and had empath in their bios. We'd talk, I'd share my struggles, and eventually they'd offer to help. Sometimes it was $20, sometimes $100. Once, I got $500 just by saying I was going to be evicted. And then came Flirtisha. I still remember her profile. Long, wavy hair. Eyes the color of those blue raspberry candies that stain your tongue for hours. Her bio said, lover of books, dogs, and second chances. Jackpot. I swiped right and matched instantly. Our convo started like all the others, casual, flirty, harmless. She told me she worked in marketing. I told her I used to work at a tech startup that shut down unexpectedly. That was a lie, of course. I'd quit because my boss wouldn't let me vape inside. She was sweet, smart, kind, way out of my league. The kind of girl who apologized when someone else bumped into her. And I played the part perfectly. I'm just trying to get back on my feet, I'd say. It's been rough, but I'm doing my best. You're so strong, she'd reply. You've got this. After a week, I dropped the first hint. I might be short on rent this month. I hate asking, but she sent me $200. No questions asked. I thanked her like she'd saved my life. And in a way, she had. That money went straight to overdue bills and a new PS5 controller. Weeks turned into months. I kept the act going. I'd take her on cheap dates, picnics, movie nights, walks in the park. She thought I was being romantic. In reality, I was dodging anything that cost money. But something happened that I didn't expect. I started to like her. Like really like her. Her laugh made my chest feel less hollow. She'd send me memes at 2 a.m. and ask if I was okay when I didn't text back fast enough. For the first time, I felt seen in a way I didn't know I needed. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't tell her the truth. I was too deep. Then came the day she asked me to meet her parents. It's nothing serious, she said. Just dinner. They're excited to meet you. My stomach dropped. I tried to get out of it. I'm working late. I'm sick. My dog exploded. But she wasn't having it. Grimbly, please, she said. It would mean a lot to me. So I gave in. The evening of the dinner, I wore my cleanest hoodie and jeans that didn't have holes in them, well, not intentional holes. I even bought a $5 bouquet of flowers from a gas station. Her parents' house was this cozy little cottage-style place with a white picket fence and a garden that looked like it had been curated by fairies. Her mom, Mrs. Crundle, greeted me with a smile and a plate of lemon bars. Her dad was a different story. Mr. Crundle was a mountain of a man. 6 foot something, broad shoulders, beard like a lumberjack who wrestled bears for fun. And his eyes? They didn't blink. So, he said as we sat down for dinner, you say you used to work in tech? I nodded, trying not to choke on my spaghetti. Yeah, startup world. Fast-paced. Burnout culture, you know? He stared at me like he was trying to read my soul and didn't like what he saw. The rest of dinner was polite but tense. He kept asking questions about my job, my plans, my future. I danced around every answer like I was auditioning for Dancing with the Liars. After dessert, Flirtisha and her mom went into the kitchen. Mr. Crundle stayed behind. Listen, Grimbly, he said in a low voice. I know what you're doing. My heart stopped. I don't know what you mean. He leaned in. You're using my daughter. You think I don't see it? You've got no job, no ambition, and too many convenient sob stories. I tried to speak, but he wasn't finished. You're not the first, but you will be the last. I stood up, muttered something about needing fresh air, and headed for the door. Flirtisha met me in the hallway. Are you okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, I need to go home. She looked hurt. Did something happen? I shook my head. It's not you. I swear. She didn't press. She just hugged me. Text me when you get home, okay? I left without looking back. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying his words in my head. You've got no ambition. You're using my daughter. He was right. The next day, I tried to ghost her. I didn't reply to her texts. I ignored her calls. But she didn't give up. Please talk to me. I miss you. I just want to understand. Eventually, I cracked. I invited her over. She sat on my couch, hugging a pillow, eyes wide with worry. I told her everything. The lies. The money. The manipulation. She cried. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet, heartbroken kind. Why me? She asked. I didn't have an answer. She left without saying goodbye. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. Mr. Crundle. I barely had time to react before he shoved me back inside. You think this is over? He growled. Please. He slammed me against the wall. You break her heart and think you get to walk away? Then he punched me. Once. Hard. I crumpled to the floor, gasping. If I ever see you near her again, he said, I'll make sure you don't get up next time. Then he left. I lay there for a long time. Not just in pain, but broken. I deserved it. Every second of it. I stopped using Tinder. I deleted all my accounts. I got a job at a call center. Boring, low pay, but honest. I'm still paying off debts. Still trying to make things right. Some nights, I think about Flirtisha, about how I destroyed something real because I was too selfish to stop. I hope she's okay, and I hope Mr. Crundle never finds out where I moved. Because if he does, well, let's just say I'm not great at dodging punches. I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll through my homework notes, but really I was on Tinder. Across from me sat my mom, sipping tea and reading some article on her tablet, completely oblivious, or so I thought. I wasn't even sure why I was on the app. Boredom? Maybe loneliness? Probably both. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but I wasn't looking for a circus either, which is what I got when I matched with Mark. Mark was persistent. That's probably the nicest way I can put it. I hadn't replied to a single one of his messages, and yet, he sent me 40. Yeah, 40. One after another. Without a single word in return. Who even does that? They weren't even just hi or hey beautiful types of messages. They were full-on paragraphs, jokes, random facts about his day, and questions like, how tall are you? Do you like dogs? What's your favorite cereal? Want to go for a drive tonight? I'd normally block someone like that immediately, but something about it was amusing. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of it that kept me from hitting the block button. I even counted the messages. That's how I know it was 40. Because I literally scrolled back and tallied them like I was grading an exam. Eventually, I gave in. I replied to his question about why I was on Tinder. Looking for a relationship, maybe a boyfriend, I wrote. Short and simple. He didn't reply immediately, which was hilarious considering how he'd been spamming me nonstop for the past 2 days. Instead, he went completely silent. 2 days later, exactly 48 hours actually, he replied. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, awesome. Do you think I'm hot? That was his response. After 2 days of silence. After 40 messages. Do you think I'm hot? I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I showed my best friend, Maya, and she snorted her drink out of her nose. He's a living meme, she said. I wasn't a cruel person, but I couldn't help myself. It became a game. I started replying with vague answers, just enough to keep the conversation going. It was something light-hearted to distract me from the stress of finals. Eventually, Maya matched with him too, on purpose, and started doing the same thing. We even made a group chat with screenshots of our conversations with Mark. It was harmless fun, or so we thought. There was something strangely robotic about Mark's messages. They all followed a pattern. He'd start with a question, then try to steer the conversation into hanging out, immediately. What are you doing now? Want to grab a coffee? Let's go for a walk. Always that day. Always right now. I ignored the invites, of course, and when I didn't reply fast enough, he'd panic. Did I say something wrong? You're ignoring me, aren't you? I knew it. I always mess things up. Then he'd flip again. Sorry, that was stupid. Let's start over. The guy was emotionally unstable, but we still didn't think he was dangerous. Not yet. I made the mistake of telling him I lived with my mom. Not the address, just that. I didn't think twice about it. It was a casual mention like, I can't talk now, my mom's calling me. That kind of thing. But then he started asking more personal questions. What part of town do you live in? What school do you go to? What's your last name again? I dodged them, giving vague answers or changing the topic. Still, he was persistent. Eventually, after dodging his latest invite to grab a drink right now, he snapped. The messages came in rapid bursts. You hate me, don't you? You never cared. No one ever does. Why do I even try? Should I just delete this app? I bet you're laughing at me. Was this all a joke to you? Then silence. For 3 days, nothing. I thought maybe he finally got the hint. Then came the message that changed everything. I will find you. Just those 4 words. No emojis. No context. No follow-up. I stared at it for a full minute before my brain accepted what I was reading. My heart started racing. I felt sick. I showed Maya, and she immediately told me to block him. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something about the way he said it. It wasn't a joke. It was a promise. I told my mom everything. I showed her the messages, the screenshots, the whole story. She flipped. Not just angry, terrified. She said we needed to call the police. I tried to calm her down, saying he probably wouldn't do anything, but deep down I was scared too. That night, I barely slept. I pushed my dresser across the door as a makeshift barricade. I knew it wouldn't stop anyone, but it made me feel a little safer. I didn't leave the house all weekend. I deleted Tinder, turned off location permissions, made my Instagram private, scrubbed everything I could think of. 3 days passed. Nothing happened. On the 4th night, I finally fell into a deep sleep. At 1:12 a.m., the doorbell rang. I shot up in bed, heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. My room was dark, but I could see the soft glow of the hallway light under the door. Then it rang again, and again, and again. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. I couldn't move. I was frozen. My body refused to respond. I felt like I was watching myself from outside my body. I couldn't even scream. My mom's voice echoed from the hallway. Who the hell is ringing the bell this late? I tried to stop her. I tried to call out, but all that came out was a choked sob. My throat was closed. My chest felt like it was being crushed. She opened my door and saw me shaking, curled up in bed, the sheets soaked. I had wet myself, out of fear, something I hadn't done since I was a little girl. She rushed over, trying to calm me down, asking what was wrong. I couldn't even form words. I just pointed to the window. She looked. There was a man standing at the front steps, repeatedly pressing the doorbell. He was wearing a hoodie, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. No car, no bike, just him, standing there like he belonged. My mom opened the window and yelled, "Hey, who are you? What do you want?" The man looked up. It was Mark. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't believe it. He was here, at our house. Somehow he found me. My mom turned to me, her face pale. "Do you know him?" I couldn't speak. She didn't wait. She slammed the window shut and grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the police." Mark started pacing on the porch, muttering to himself, still ringing the bell every few seconds. His face was twisted in confusion or anger. I couldn't tell. He looked like someone who had lost his grip on reality long ago. When the police arrived, Mark tried to act normal. "I'm here to pick up my girlfriend," he told the officers. "We were supposed to go on a date." The officers pulled him aside, asked him questions, and then told him to leave the property immediately. They warned him not to come back, and that charges could be filed if he did. I never found out how he got our address. The officers said they'd investigate, but I never heard back. Maybe he pieced it together from social media. A tagged location, a background in a photo, maybe even something I said without realizing. After that night, I couldn't sleep for weeks. I kept the dresser against the door. I kept the blinds shut. I jumped at every creak in the floorboards. My mom never let me forget it. "You brought this into our home," she'd say. And she wasn't wrong. I had. I deleted every dating app. I cut off all contact with strangers online. I even changed my number. I'm sitting in my car, parked 2 blocks away from the cafe, and I've never been so grateful for silence. The date I just had with Brandon drained every ounce of social energy I had. I feel like I just attended a 4-hour lecture on apocalypse survival, coffee culture, and why memes are the purest art form known to mankind. I didn't sign up for that. I signed up for a cappuccino and a chat. Instead, I got a one-man TED Talk with no intermission. Let me start from the beginning. Brandon and I matched on Tinder a week ago. He had warm brown eyes, short curly hair, and a confident smile that made me think, okay, maybe this one's different. His bio said he was a curious thinker, lover of nature, and unapologetically real. I should have known from that last part. People who claim to be unapologetically real are often the least self-aware people on the planet. Still, our chats were light and humorous. He made a few jokes that landed, and he seemed to have genuine enthusiasm for life. At the very least, I figured it'd be an interesting experience. I told myself to keep an open mind. After all, how bad could coffee with a stranger really be? Spoiler, very bad. I got to the cafe early, like a solid 15 minutes early. I like to scope out the room, pick the best seat, and mentally prepare myself. I ordered a caramel macchiato and found a corner booth by the window. The place was cozy, all exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs, and local art hanging from wires. The kind of place where everyone pretends they're writing a novel but are really scrolling through Reddit. Then Brandon walked in. He was wearing a black t-shirt that said, "I'm not arguing, I'm just explaining why I'm right," paired with khaki cargo shorts and hiking sandals. In March, it was 53 degrees outside. I blinked and tried to swallow the first wave of regret that hit me. "Hey," he said loudly, as if announcing himself to the entire cafe. A few heads turned. I gave a small wave and smiled, trying to suppress the sinking feeling in my gut. He sat across from me and launched straight into commentary about the vibe of the place. "It's got this post-industrial, anti-consumerist vibe, right?" He used the word vibe at least 6 more times before I could get a word in. I asked him, "So what's your go-to drink?" He leaned back, grinning like he was about to reveal a secret. "Oh, I only drink cold brew. Hot coffee is for amateurs." I smiled politely. "Why do you say that?" "It's got a better flavor profile. And honestly, hot coffee's been ruined by the corporate machine. You know, Starbucks, Dunkin', all that watered-down nonsense. Cold brew is for people who respect the bean." I nodded slowly and took a long sip of my caramel macchiato, which was drowning in whipped cream and sugar. It was delicious, and I didn't care what Brandon thought about it. He kept going, talking about how the cafe's aesthetic reminded him of a place in Portland where he almost moved to, but didn't because of the energy. I didn't ask what that meant. I tried to change the subject. "So, what do you do for work?" "I'm an independent consultant." "What kind of consulting?" "I help small businesses grow their online presence. You know, engagement strategies, algorithm analysis, that kind of thing." Translation: he sells Instagram likes. "Cool," I said, unsure how else to respond. He took this as an invitation to launch into a 15-minute speech about the evils of social media, despite the fact that his entire job revolves around it. "Do you know what the real problem is?" he asked. "People don't know how to present authenticity. Everyone's just performing." I wanted to say, "You're literally wearing a shirt that performs arrogance," but I bit my tongue. Then came the apocalypse talk. I asked him what he liked to do for fun, hoping he'd say something normal like hiking or movies. Instead, his eyes lit up. "I've been deep into survival prepping lately." "Oh, yeah. I follow a bunch of YouTube channels. Learn how to make fire with sticks, purify water, identify wild edibles. Did you know you can eat dandelions?" I did not. They're actually super nutritious. I've been experimenting with wild foraging. Found some mushrooms that looked safe. Haven't tried them yet, though. Still researching. I stared at him, trying to picture this man crouched in a city park, gnawing on weeds while bypassers watched in horror. "Right," I said. "So you're preparing for what exactly?" "The collapse. You know, climate change, economic downfall, government control. It's all coming. You've got to be ready." He pulled out a small notebook and opened it to a page labeled Bug-Out Bag Essentials. I kid you not. He had a bulleted list of items he was collecting. Portable stove, water filters, high-calorie ration bars, a foldable shovel. I was speechless. I looked around the cafe. Everyone else was having normal conversations, laughing, reading, existing peacefully. Meanwhile, I was stuck in the middle of a doomsday prepper's PowerPoint presentation. To steer the conversation into safer territory, I mentioned that I worked as a graphic designer. He nodded, pretending to be interested, before saying, "Design is cool, but memes are where the real art is." Memes? Think about it. They spread faster than anything. They're culturally relevant, accessible, free. It's modern art for the people. I mean, memes are fun, but design is about communication. Problem solving. Yeah, but memes are raw, unfiltered. Design is just commercial. It's corporate storytelling. I rolled my eyes internally. I didn't know how much longer I could take this. Then came his diet opinions. The waitress brought us a slice of cheesecake to share. I was hoping it would be the one redeeming part of this date. I took a bite, creamy, sweet, amazing, and just as I was about to go in for another forkful, Brandon dropped this gem. Cheesecake is basically a heart attack on a plate. You know that, right? I froze. Excuse me? No offense, just saying. Dairy, sugar, processed carbs. It's poison, really. I looked him dead in the eyes, put my fork down, and said, Brandon, shut up. He laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. The date ended shortly after that. I told him I had to get home to finish a project. He offered to walk me to my car, but I declined. He insisted. I declined again. He finally got the message. Now here I am, sitting in my car, trying to process what just happened. My expectations were never high. I've been on enough Tinder dates to know better, but I still didn't expect to be lectured on the nutritional value of desserts and the symbolic power of memes. Brandon wasn't dangerous. He wasn't creepy. He was just insufferable and exhausting, and so far removed from reality that I felt like I needed to meditate for an hour just to balance myself again. Dating apps are wild. You never know what you're going to get. A stalker, a doomsday preacher, a guy who thinks cheesecake is a sin. Next time, I'm doing a video call first. If they can talk about bug-out bags for more than 60 seconds, I'm out. But here I am, 3 years later after that event, sitting in my modest apartment in Oaxaca, Mexico, and writing down the memory of the day I almost lost someone before I ever really had the chance to know her. It was the end of October, and the city was buzzing with preparations for Dia de los Muertos. The air was thick with the scent of marigolds, grilled meats, and sweet bread. Paper skeletons danced in the windows, and lanterns glowed with a haunting beauty. I had come to Mexico originally just to escape. The grind of work and rent in Austin, Texas had become unbearable. What started as a spontaneous trip turned into a permanent relocation. The city enchanted me with its colors, its people, and its rhythm. But after the honeymoon phase of my move wore off, the loneliness crept in like a slow fog. So I did what many of us do when we're feeling isolated. I downloaded Tinder. I wasn't expecting anything serious. Maybe some casual conversation, maybe a coffee date or two. But then I matched with Tina. Her profile was honest and unpretentious. She had a photo of herself in front of a mural in Coyoacan and another smiling, holding a street taco in one hand and a pineapple agua fresca in the other. Her messages were witty, warm, and refreshingly real. After a few days of chatting, we agreed to meet at a small cafe I'd been to before, one that served locally roasted coffee and had the best chocolate croissants outside of France. I arrived early, nervous energy coursing through me. When Tina walked in, dressed in a flowing sunflower yellow dress, I felt the air in my lungs pause. She was even more beautiful in real life, and when she smiled and said, "Hey Craig, you found me," I felt like I already knew her. The first hour was magic. We talked about everything from our favorite books to bizarre travel encounters. She told me about growing up in a small town in Oregon and how she had recently moved to Mexico to teach English and immerse herself in a new culture. I told her about my love for photography and my decision to leave behind the corporate world for something more meaningful, even if less stable. After our coffee and croissants, Tina suggested we take a little walk. There was a street vendor she liked nearby who sold grilled corn slathered in cheese and chili powder. I didn't hesitate. The sun was high, the streets were alive with music and chatter, and everything seemed to be going perfectly. Until it wasn't. We had just turned a corner when we heard a low, guttural growl. I looked up and froze. From behind a trash bin staggered a mangy street dog. It was medium-sized but looked famished, its ribs pressing against its skin, and its eyes wide with hunger and fear. It bared its teeth and snarled at us, saliva dripping from its mouth. Tina instinctively stepped back, but I remembered something from a travel safety blog. Don't run, don't move too fast. Still, the dog was already reacting. It lunged. I moved without thinking. I pushed Tina behind me and tried to shout and wave my arms in an effort to frighten the dog. The animal barked wildly, its eyes darting between us. I could feel Tina clutching the back of my shirt, her breathing rapid. Then the dog attacked. It lunged for Tina's leg, biting down with a ferocity that chilled my blood. She screamed, a sharp, guttural sound that cut through the bustling street. I tried to kick the dog away, yelling, grabbing at anything nearby. But it held on, growling, until suddenly a man appeared. Out of nowhere, He rushed at the dog with a large plastic bottle and sprayed water directly into its face. The dog yelped, startled, and released Tina's leg before bolting down the alley, disappearing into the shadows. Tina collapsed to the pavement, clutching her leg. Blood seeped through her fingers, running down to her ankle. My heart slammed in my chest as I knelt beside her. "Tina! Hey, stay with me. You're okay. You're okay." She was pale, trembling, her breath coming in short gasps. "It bit me," she whispered, her voice thin with shock. I nodded, trying to stay calm. People were starting to gather. Someone offered me tissues. Another person pulled out their phone. I called a taxi using an app, but the first driver canceled when I mentioned there was blood. The second one was more cooperative when I promised to pay extra. At the hospital, the minutes blurred into hours. The waiting room was filled with murmurs, beeping machines, and the smell of antiseptics. Tina was taken in quickly, and I stayed by her side, holding her hand and brushing her hair back from her face. She was still crying, but quieter now, as though the reality of what had happened was only just sinking in. The doctor confirmed that the bite had punctured skin deeply, but there were no broken bones. He cleaned the wound, gave her a tetanus shot, and began a series of rabies vaccinations just to be safe. He smiled gently. "She's going to be fine," he said in Spanish. I could have collapsed then, and there from the relief. Tina was discharged later that evening, her leg bandaged and her spirits slightly lifted. I helped her into the cab and took her back to her apartment. She invited me to stay for a while, and I did. We sat in her living room, drinking chamomile tea, both in shock but grateful. "I can't believe that happened," she said, shaking her head. "It felt like something out of a nightmare." I nodded. "Yeah, but I'm glad I was with you. I don't even want to think about what could have happened if you were alone." We didn't kiss that night. There was no romantic crescendo, just quiet understanding, and the kind of connection that forms when two people go through something terrifying and survive it together. Over the following weeks, we kept seeing each other. Slowly, the trauma of that day faded into the background, replaced by laughter, long walks, shared meals, and countless conversations. Tina fully recovered, though she still has a faint scar on her leg. Today, we sometimes joke that our first date was a literal dogfight. But underneath the humor is a shared memory that bonds us in a rare way, not just because of what happened, but because of how we responded to it. I was curled up on my couch, a half-eaten bowl of popcorn by my side, and my phone glowing in my hand. Outside, the wind rustled the branches against the windows of my small apartment in New Orleans. I'd just turned 31, and after months of dancing around the idea, I finally gave in and re-downloaded Tinder. I told myself it was just for fun, just a few harmless chats, maybe even a date if someone decent came along. I wasn't expecting anything serious, certainly not love. But I also wasn't expecting fear, paranoia, or the kind of twisted rabbit hole I'd soon find myself falling into. That's how I met Ben, or at least, that's what he called himself. Ben's profile was well put together. He had 3 pictures, one of him at a coffee shop, another hiking in what looked like the Rockies, and a final one of him laughing with friends. His bio was short but charming: coffee addict, amateur poet, always up for an adventure. He had that kind of everyman appeal, nothing overly flashy, just a nice, clean profile that made him seem grounded. We matched late on a Tuesday night, and he messaged me first. Just a simple, "Hey there," smiling face with smiling eyes. It was harmless. We started talking, and the conversation flowed easily. Favorite books, worst vacations, favorite pizza toppings. He was funny, respectful, and even a little shy in a way that made me lower my guard. After a few days, Ben suggested we meet up for a drink. I said I'd think about it, not because I didn't want to, but because something about him didn't quite sit right. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't anything he said specifically. It was more about what he didn't say. His answers sometimes felt too polished, as though he was trying to play a role rather than just be himself. That night, I found myself going down a path I never expected. I started Googling things like Tinder trafficking statistics and online dating safety tips. I wasn't looking for validation. I was looking for peace of mind. Instead, I found stories that made my skin go cold. One article from a national safety group reported that dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge had been increasingly exploited by traffickers. According to data from the National Human Trafficking Hotline, hundreds of cases had been linked to these platforms over the past decade. Young women, especially those between 16 and 25, were being targeted, not just in foreign countries, but in places like Florida, Ohio, and Louisiana. I kept reading. Some victims were lured in with promises of modeling gigs. Others were invited to exclusive parties, only to find themselves drugged and transported across state lines. There were stories of women who met men on dating apps, only to be isolated, manipulated, and eventually controlled, financially, emotionally, and physically. I started to panic. Ben had never said anything creepy. He hadn't pressured me or asked for anything inappropriate. But now every message from him made my stomach twist in knots. I remembered what my best friend Adele once told me. Your gut knows, listen to it. So I started doing some digging. I reverse searched his profile images. The hiking photo was a stock image. I found it on a travel blog from 2017. The coffee shop picture didn't show up anywhere else, but the third one, the group photo, was a dead end. No tags. No watermarks. Just a blurry image that could have been taken anywhere. Still, I wasn't ready to accuse Ben of anything. Maybe he used a stock photo for aesthetic reasons. Maybe he was just shy about posting real images. But the unease wouldn't go away. Our chats continued for another day or two, and I kept things casual. Then one night, something changed. We were talking about our favorite childhood memories, and I mentioned how I used to ride my bike around the neighborhood until sunset. He responded with a message that made my heart skip. Funny, I can actually picture you doing that. Wearing a red hoodie, right? I froze. I had never mentioned the red hoodie. It was something I wore all the time as a kid, but it wasn't in any of my photos or social media. It was such an oddly specific detail that I didn't know how to respond. I typed, "Wait, how did you know that?" and stared at the screen waiting. His reply came a minute later. "Just a guess. You seem like the type." I didn't reply. Not that night. Not ever again. Instead, I started reading more survivor accounts. I found a subreddit dedicated to women who had encountered dangerous men through dating apps. Their stories were terrifyingly similar. Charming profiles, casual conversations, sudden shifts into creepy territory. In some cases, they never even made it to the first date. In others, they barely escaped with their lives. One story in particular stuck with me. A woman named Natalie had matched with a man who seemed perfect. They talked for weeks before he invited her to a dinner party. Fortunately, her roommate insisted on tagging along. When they arrived, it wasn't a party. It was a nearly empty house with two other men. She and her roommate managed to leave, but later she found out that the house was under surveillance for suspected trafficking activity. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept my phone under my pillow and double-checked the locks on my doors. I deleted Tinder, blocked Ben, and backed up all my messages. The next day, I filed a report on the app and submitted what I had found to a local advocacy group that tracks suspicious profiles. I don't know if Ben was dangerous. I'll never know. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was that I had trusted my instincts and I was safe. Still, the experience changed me. I started volunteering with a local organization focused on digital safety for women. We held workshops, created checklists for safe online dating, and shared resources on how to identify red flags. I spoke with survivors, listened to their stories, and realized how incredibly lucky I was to get away with just a scare. It's strange how fast a day can turn. One moment you're watching someone smile, and the next, you're watching their lungs fight for air they can no longer breathe. I never thought a first date could end with sirens and tears. But that's exactly what happened. My name is Emil, and I live in a small Nordic city where the skies are often cloudy and the coffee is always strong. I work as a systems analyst, which is a polite way of saying I spend most of my day in front of a screen, solving problems no one else understands. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. Predictable. Love, though? That's been anything but. I'd been single for 3 years. Not by choice. After my last relationship ended, mutual, but painful, I buried myself in work. The days bled into each other. Deadlines, meetings, frozen dinners. Rinse, repeat. I told myself I didn't need anyone. That solitude was strength. But the truth is, I was lonely. That's how I ended up on Tinder. I wasn't expecting much. Just someone to talk to. Maybe flirt. Maybe meet. I never thought I'd swipe right on someone like Sarah. Her profile was full of color. Painted murals, gallery exhibits, snapshots of old European towns. She was a visual artist, she said, and her bio read, "I draw what I feel. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's a mess." Like me. We started chatting one rainy Tuesday evening. Our conversation was effortless. She was clever, funny, and open. We talked about art, cities we wanted to visit, and our favorite kinds of bread. Hers was sourdough, mine was rye. She teased me for that. After 2 weeks of steady messaging, we decided to meet. Nothing fancy. Just a local cafe about 4 kilometers from my flat. A cozy place with big windows, warm lighting, and cinnamon pastries that made you forget the outside world. I was nervous. I picked out a sweater that didn't make me look too stiff, made sure my shoes were clean, and checked my reflection more times than I'd admit. I arrived 5 minutes late, which wasn't like me, but when I walked in and saw her standing by the counter, all nervous energy turned to awe. Sarah was even more beautiful in person. She had short auburn hair tucked behind one ear, silver rings on her fingers, and a calm presence that made the world around her seem slower. "Emile?" she asked, smiling. "Guilty," I replied. She insisted on buying the drinks. "My treat," she said, and I offered to get us pastries in return. We sat near the window, sipping coffee and sharing a strawberry tart that she said reminded her of summers in Bratislava. The conversation flowed like we'd known each other for years. She had a dry wit, and I found myself laughing more than I had in months. After an hour, she looked at me with a mischievous glint and said, "Want to go for a drive? I know a few cool spots around the city." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because letting someone else take the lead was new for me. Still, I nodded. Her car was a small hatchback, nothing flashy. It smelled faintly of lavender and dog fur. She apologized for the mess, tossing a sketchbook and water bottle into the back seat. Before pulling out of the parking spot, she reached for an air freshener dangling from her mirror, a sleek silver canister. She sprayed it once, filling the car with a warm vanilla scent. I didn't think much of it at the time. We drove through the city, pointing out murals and buildings with odd architecture. Our conversation shifted from art to childhood memories, then to books we'd never finished. Sarah had a way of making even mundane things feel important. I remember thinking, this could be something. Then everything changed. We were turning down a quiet street near the riverbank when Sarah went silent mid-sentence. Her hands clenched the steering wheel, and she started blinking rapidly. "Sarah?" I asked. She didn't answer. Her breathing quickened, shallow and erratic. She brought one hand to her throat and gasped. I can't breathe." At first, I thought she was joking, some kind of weird prank. But then I saw her eyes, wide, terrified, locked on nothing. Her face had gone pale, and she was wheezing, struggling to suck in air. Panic surged through me. Hey, you're okay, just pull over, pull over." She managed to steer the car to the curb before her head slumped forward against the wheel. I jumped out, ran around to her side, and opened the door. She was clutching at her chest, her breath ragged and shallow. I had no idea what to do. "Sarah, are you having an asthma attack?" I asked. She nodded faintly. I fumbled for my phone and called emergency services. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "Yes, she's having an asthma attack. She's barely breathing. We're on Lovgata, just past the river bridge. Please hurry." I threw the air freshener out the window, opened all the doors, anything to circulate air. I searched her bag for an inhaler, nothing. The glove compartment, empty. My heart was pounding. I could hear her struggling, her breath coming in awful, wheezy gasps. "Where is it? Where's your inhaler?" I asked, kneeling next to her. She managed to whisper, "Trunk." I bolted to the back of the car, opened it, and found a small blue bag. Inside was her inhaler. I ran back, placed it to her mouth, and tried to help her use it. But it didn't work. Her body was too weak. Her muscles weren't cooperating. The inhaler barely registered. I felt useless. "Come on, stay with me, Sarah. Just breathe. Please." She looked at me, eyes glassy, lips turning a terrifying shade of blue. I held her hand, whispered anything I could think of, memories from our chat, promises of pastries, anything to keep her anchored. And then silence. Her eyes rolled back. Her chest stopped moving. I thought she was gone. I screamed. I begged the universe to rewind time. I would have done anything, to take that moment back. Then I heard it, the distant wail of sirens. Relief and dread crashed over me like a wave. I ran into the street, waving frantically as the ambulance turned the corner. The medics jumped out, calm and surgical in their movements. "She's had a severe asthma attack," I shouted. "The air freshener, maybe allergic." They moved quickly, oxygen mask, injection, monitoring her vitals. I stood back, useless, trembling. One of the paramedics looked at me and said, "You did good. You found the inhaler. You kept her conscious. That helped. But it didn't feel like enough." They loaded her into the ambulance. I asked if I could come. They let me sit near the back, watching as they continued treatment. Her breathing stabilized little by little. Her color returned. Her fingers stopped twitching. In the hospital, I sat in the waiting room for 2 hours, replaying everything. The air freshener. My hesitation. The look in her eyes. When they finally let me see her, she was groggy but awake. She smiled weakly and whispered, "You stayed." I nodded, choking back tears. Of course I stayed. She was kept overnight for observation. The doctors said it was a combination of asthma and an allergic reaction, likely triggered by something in the spray. They told me that without quick action, she might not have made it. I visited her again that night, brought her snacks, a sketchbook, and a cheap stuffed bear from the hospital gift shop. She laughed at how ugly it was. We kept seeing each other after that, not out of guilt or obligation, but because something real had sparked between us. It's weird how one lie can turn into a 4-year relationship. And by weird, I mean terrifying, especially when the lie is your name and your entire identity. Let me explain. My name is Casper Lindegard. I'm 33 and work as a senior legal advisor at a firm that prides itself on long hours, overpriced coffee, and passive-aggressive emails. I'm not the office clown or the guy who brings in cupcakes. I'm the one in the corner cubicle, always working late, always replying with "per my last email," and deeply allergic to small talk. The truth is, I'm lonely. I didn't set out to deceive anyone, honestly. But you try being single in a workplace where even a sneeze gets dissected in the break room. I could already hear it. "Oh, did you hear? Casper from compliance is on Tinder now. Must be desperate." I didn't want the whispers. I didn't want the pity. So I did what any overanalytical, socially anxious overachiever would do. I made a fake profile. Enter Mikkel. Mikkel sounded relaxed, approachable, like a guy who wore denim jackets and used cologne that smelled like pine and confidence. Mikkel didn't stress about quarterly reports or get anxious before Zoom calls. He was the opposite of me. I uploaded a slightly older picture of myself, less corporate, more casual, and listed my job as freelance writer, because that sounded creative and mysterious. I figured I'd flirt a bit, maybe go on a date or two. Nothing serious. Just enough to remind myself that I was still human. Then I matched with Leaky. Her name alone made me pause. Leaky. It means happiness in Danish, which felt like a challenge in itself. Her profile was minimal. A few sun-drenched travel shots, a black and white sketch of a French cafe, and a one-sentence bio. Chasing light and good coffee. We started chatting that evening. She was witty, sarcastic in the best way, and never used emojis. I liked that. Our conversations were casual, but laced with curiosity. I told her I was Mikkel, a writer working on a piece about urban loneliness. She told me she was a designer, freelance mostly, with a love for strange museums and late-night walks. We messaged on and off for about a month. Nothing intense. Just tiny pebbles of connection that slowly built into something more. Eventually, we decided to meet. Her idea, not mine. "Let's do something weird," she said. "Like bingo." Bingo? I thought she was joking. I mean, who suggests a bingo hall for a first date? But she was serious. And weirdly, I loved it. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in jeans and a navy coat that I hoped screamed creative freelance guy, and not exhausted lawyer trying too hard. I sat at a table near the back, surrounded by pensioners shuffling cards and whispering numbers like they were state secrets. Then she walked in. Leaky was stunning. Not in a flashy, overdone way, but in the kind of way that made you forget what you were thinking. She wore a mustard yellow dress with tiny white flowers on it, and had a scarf tied around her neck like she'd just stepped out of a painting. Her hair was messy in an intentional way, and her eyes flicked across the room like she was collecting stories. She spotted me and smiled. "Mikkel?" "That's me," I said, standing up and offering my hand, which she ignored in favor of a hug. She smelled like bergamot and something citrusy. I tried not to look stunned. We sat down, and the conversation immediately clicked. No awkward silences. No forced small talk. We joked about the competitive elderly around us, made up fake bingo rivalries, and even got shushed by a woman in a purple sweater named Hedvig who took the game very seriously. It was perfect. 20 minutes in, Leaky leaned back, looked me dead in the eye and said, "You know, Mikkel, I was surprised to see you on Tinder." My heart stopped. Surprised? I asked, trying to sound casual while my brain started screaming. Yeah, I didn't expect to run into anyone from my past, especially not from the firm. My stomach dropped into my shoes. The firm? I croaked. What do you mean? She smirked. Come on, Casper. I used to work in HR. Lindegard, head of legal affairs. I reviewed your CV when we were hiring for the compliance team. I know exactly who you are. I wanted to vanish, evaporate into the bingo cards, and become one with the retirees. Before I could respond, she burst out laughing. Relax. I don't care. I left that place 2 years ago. You've got nothing to worry about. I stared at her, stunned. Wait, you're not mad. Mad? No. Amused? Absolutely. You look like you just got caught stealing office supplies. We both started laughing, probably too loudly, and Hedvig gave us another death glare. The rest of the night was surreal. We played bingo like it was an Olympic sport, won a plastic trophy labeled Best Couple, thanks to a suspiciously generous announcer, and ended up walking to a nearby taco truck around midnight. She took my hand without asking, just laced her fingers through mine like we'd done it 100 times before. I didn't pull away. Over greasy tacos and shared laughter, I told her the truth. About the fake name, the fear of judgment, the loneliness that had driven me to create Mickle in the first place. She listened, didn't interrupt, just nodded slowly and said, You know, I kind of figured. No freelance writer talks that confidently about EU trade law. We both laughed again and something shifted. The lie was out and she stayed. That night, we sat in her car for almost an hour, talking about everything childhood, family regrets. She told me about her sister's wedding in Portugal and how she once spent a week in a Norwegian fishing village just to paint boats. I told her about the time I accidentally sent a confidential memo to the entire office and blamed it on a software glitch. We kissed just before she dropped me off. It wasn't cinematic. There were no fireworks, but it felt safe, familiar, like something I didn't know I'd been craving. That was the beginning. We dated for 4 years. For ridiculous, beautiful years. We argued about laundry and paint colors, and once about how to properly store cheese. But we also traveled to obscure museums, hosted terrible dinner parties, and made each other laugh until we cried. Eventually, the Mickle thing became a running joke. Hey Mickle, she'd say whenever I forgot to take the bins out. Mickle wouldn't forget. We moved in together after a year. Adopted a cat named Soren. Grew into each other's lives like ivy on a wall. I still replay that night in my head, over and over, like a film reel stuck in a loop, refusing to let me move on. People say time dulls the edges of grief, but I don't think that's true. Not when the memory is so vivid, so painfully stitched into the fabric of your being, that even blinking feels like betrayal. It all started on a Sunday afternoon in late autumn. I was scrolling through my phone absent-mindedly, not really expecting anything to catch my attention. I didn't even use Tinder regularly. Months would pass without me opening the app, but something compelled me that day. Her name was Aliska. Unusual, like a forgotten melody you want to hear again. Her profile was sparse, but her photos were captivating. Something in her eyes hinted at depth, mischief, and maybe something broken. She messaged me first, bluntly. Drinks? No hello, no introduction. I remember raising an eyebrow and replying, How about a greeting first? Maybe a name, a how are you? She responded with a laughing emoji and said, Don't worry, I'm just direct. But okay, hi. How are you? That was the start of it. The first domino. We messaged back and forth for about a month. Her tone was always erratic. One moment we were talking about films. The next she was suggesting we go on a drive to smoke something or wander around abandoned buildings. I should have seen the flags. Hell, I did see them, but I ignored them. Maybe out of loneliness. Maybe out of hope. Being a single dad at 28 wasn't something I had planned. My ex, Daria, and I had known each other since childhood. We were practically raised side by side in the same Czech village. We started dating at 15, and I thought she was the one. We had Marek when we were just 23. Then, without warning, she left. No explanation, just a note and a hollow space where our family used to be. My parents speculated she had met someone else. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. What mattered was that Marek stayed with me. He chose me. That counts for something, doesn't it? Anyway, back to Aliska. After a few weeks of inconsistent texting, I finally asked her out. She insisted on choosing the activity. I hesitated, knowing full well what she'd suggest. I wasn't wrong. She picked a nightclub downtown. A real one, she said, adding 3 fire emojis for effect. I should have said no. I paid €80 for a babysitter that night, a cost that made me wince. Aliska showed up at my door around 7 p.m. She wore a black leather jacket and a grin that hinted at trouble. Surprisingly, she was incredibly sweet with Merrick. She knelt to his level, asked about his favorite cartoons, and even complimented his toy dinosaur collection. For a moment, I let my guard down. Maybe I thought, this girl isn't as chaotic as she seems. We drove to the club together. I figured if things went south, I could always drive her home. I had the keys, after all. I had control, or so I thought. The moment we stepped into the club, I knew I had made a mistake. The place was loud, packed, and smelled like sweat, sugar, and stale beer. The male-to-female ratio was unbalanced. Clearly, this was a hunting ground for desperate men and chaotic women. Aliska moved through the crowd like she owned it. She waved at bartenders, hugged random people, and ordered 3 shots before I had even found a place to sit. Then she disappeared into the restroom. 10 minutes later, she emerged with flushed cheeks, twitching fingers, and a nose redder than a winter apple. She was sneezing uncontrollably and laughing like she hadn't a care in the world. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. But I wasn't naive. I had seen this before, backstage at events, in green rooms, in alleyways behind venues. Cocaine. It was obvious. She knocked back drinks like water. I tried to pace myself with a cocktail, but she was already on her 5th by the time I finished mine. She took 4 more trips to the bathroom in the next 2 hours. Each time, she came back more disoriented, more fragile. I should have taken her home then. I should have dragged her out. But something held me back, some twisted sense of responsibility. I started seeing her not as a date, but as someone I needed to protect. She reminded me of a younger cousin I used to look after. Someone who didn't know how to say no. Someone lost. Around midnight, I told her we were leaving. Her eyes were glassy, but she nodded. Then she mumbled, "Toilet. One last time." I let her go. That's the moment that haunts me most. 15 minutes passed. I stood near the restroom, watching the door like a hawk. No sign of her. I asked a woman nearby to check if anyone was in the stalls. She came back pale, eyes wide. "There's a girl in the last stall. She's not responding." Panic. Screaming. Staff rushed in. Then medics. Then silence. They found her collapsed on the floor, unresponsive. No pulse. Not breathing. White powder on her sleeve and a baggie clutched in her fist. They tried everything. CPR. Adrenaline. A defibrillator. But she was gone before anyone even realized she was in trouble. They say she had been dead for nearly half an hour. The timeline made sense. I had been waiting outside that door for nearly 20 minutes. She must have collapsed almost immediately. The music kept playing in the background, a rhythmic, heartless beat that seemed to mock the gravity of what was happening. The club didn't stop. People still danced. Others whispered, recorded, gawked. I stood outside the women's restroom, numb, while they zipped her into a black bag and carried her past me. The last time I saw Aliska, she was full of chaotic energy, laughter, and danger. The next time, she was a lifeless weight in someone else's hands. Her parents reached out later. They didn't blame me. They said she had been struggling for years. Rehab. Relapses. A cycle that they had long grown exhausted from. They thanked me for trying to help her. Said she probably felt safe with me. But it didn't help. I still feel responsible. I still think that if I had just said no to that night, she might still be alive. I deleted Tinder the next morning. I haven't opened it since. Merrick asked me that evening, "Papa, where's the lady with the shiny jacket?" I told him she had to go away. He nodded and went back to his toy dinosaurs. I held him a little tighter that night, and every night since. Today has been one of the hardest days of my life. I feel like I'm trapped inside a memory I didn't ask for, one that replays in flashes every time I close my eyes. I need to write this down before the details start to fade, even though part of me wishes I could forget it all. My name is Naomi. I'm 28, living in Minneapolis. I'm not the most outgoing person, but I like meeting new people when the moment feels right. That's what led me to try Tinder. A couple of my friends had met decent people on there, so I thought, why not? That's how I met Josh. His profile was simple but inviting. Photos of him hiking, grinning next to his golden retriever, and one where he looked out over a lake at sunset. He seemed thoughtful, grounded, and funny. We hit it off quickly, chatting every day, exchanging long messages that made me smile. He had a charm that snuck up on you. After a few days, he suggested we meet up for coffee. I agreed, feeling more excited than I had in a long time. The day of the date, I pulled on my favorite oversized sweater, leggings, and boots. The autumn air was crisp, with that kind of early chill that makes everything feel sharper. I arrived at the cafe early, but Josh was already there, standing with Max, his golden retriever, sitting loyally at his side. He waved and smiled, and for a while, everything felt normal. We talked easily. He asked thoughtful questions, told funny stories, and made me laugh. But as the conversation went on, I started noticing little things. He leaned in too close sometimes. His laugh, though warm at first, had a sharpness to it that didn't quite sit right. I brushed it off, first date nerves, I told myself. Halfway through the coffee, he suggested we take Max for a walk in the park nearby. I hesitated for a second, but it seemed harmless. I wanted to keep giving him the benefit of the doubt. So I said yes. We walked beneath trees shedding golden leaves, the late afternoon sky fading into soft orange. It should have been peaceful, but something felt off. The further we walked, the quieter it got. No other walkers. No kids playing. Just us. Then it happened. Two men appeared from the wooded area ahead of us. They looked rough, torn jackets, dirt-streaked jeans, and eyes that didn't feel safe. One of them smirked. "Hey, you done with your little date?" He called out to Josh, like they knew each other. Josh's body went stiff. "We're just leaving," he said, voice tight. The men kept walking toward us. "You want to hang out for a bit?" One of them asked. "We've got something you might like." There was something in his tone, like a trap disguised as a joke. My gut twisted. I looked at Josh, and I could see it clearly in his face now, fear. He turned to me. "Naomi, we need to go. Now." Before I could even react, one of the men stepped forward like he was about to grab me. Josh shoved me back and stood between us. Max barked wildly, lunging at his leash. Everything turned to chaos, shouting, frantic movement, my heart pounding in my ears. Josh fought them. I stood frozen for too long. My legs wouldn't move. Then I heard him yell, "Run." That was all it took. I turned and sprinted back toward the park entrance, crashing through leaves and branches. I didn't know if they were chasing me. I didn't stop to look. I just ran. I reached the street and looked around, desperate. It was quiet, too quiet. Then I saw a small corner store across the road. I ran straight in, gasping, shouting for help. The cashier jolted, then grabbed the phone and called 911. "Lock the door," he yelled. I ducked behind a shelf, trying to catch my breath. Then I heard banging. One of the men had followed me. A second later, the door burst open. Josh stumbled in, face bloodied, breathing hard. "Get away from her," he screamed at the guy still trying to get in. The cashier backed away, stunned, still on the phone with the police. Eventually, the chaos ended. The police arrived. One of the men was arrested. The other one ran. They still haven't found him. Later, I learned the truth. Josh confessed. He had drug debts. The two men had been threatening him. They told him if he lured a woman, just one, to a secluded place, they'd wipe his debt clean. And he agreed. He'd planned it, but when it came down to it, something snapped in him. He fought back instead. He saved me, but he also led me into danger. I don't know how to feel. I walked away with scraped knees and a torn jacket. But it's the invisible wounds that hurt most. The fear, the betrayal, the knowledge that I let my guard down and almost paid the price. Even Max was shaken, barking the whole time, pacing nervously. He knew something was wrong. I'll never forget that night. So yeah, as most of you probably guessed, this all started on Tinder. I was doing what most of us do, aimlessly swiping left, hoping someone would catch my eye. After about 20 minutes of mindless scrolling, I came across a profile that stood out. Her name was Kirsty. Something about her intrigued me. She had this gentle birthmark on her cheek that added to her charm. Her smile was warm, her eyes curious, and her style screamed creativity. Her bio hinted at a love for indie music, art, and existential philosophy. It felt like she was speaking to my wavelength. Against my usual caution, I swiped right. We matched that same evening and started chatting. I'd been feeling kind of flat lately, but her energy pulled me in. She was witty, unusual, and made me laugh. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was connecting with someone on a deeper level. We agreed to meet the following night for drinks. I wasn't sure what to expect. The place we chose was a dive bar, dark, loud, kind of smelled like wet carpet and regret. People were shouting, laughing, and even tossing drinks at each other like it was some kind of ritual. Not exactly ideal. I spotted Kirsty tucked away at a small table near the back, away from the madness. And wow, she was even more captivating in person. Her hair was dyed a vivid blue, and she wore a vintage dress that screamed personality. She looked around the bar, eyes darting like she was assessing the scene. I figured she was silently judging the choice of location. The conversation kicked off easily. She spoke quickly, animatedly, about the stars and how we're all connected. At first, it was kind of magical. But then, something shifted. The way she spoke became intense, almost unnerving. She described love as a chemical illusion, a mess of serotonin and dopamine. Her laughter echoed a little too loud for the setting, drawing glances from nearby tables. I started to feel uneasy. Trying to stay polite, I listened as she shared more of her thoughts. Then came the first real red flag. She said she could read people's pasts just by looking into their eyes. I laughed, assuming she was being ironic. But her stare told a different story. She was dead serious. Then she started talking about her ex. She'd tracked him online, followed him to work, and confronted him over having coffee with another woman. And she shared all this with a strange kind of pride. I started feeling like I was in a psychological thriller, not a date. But what really pushed things over the edge was when she leaned in close and whispered, "If I told you I loved you right now, would you feel the same?" My stomach sank. I tried to laugh it off, saying it felt a bit soon. Her smile twitched, then faded completely. "You don't get it, do you?" she muttered, her tone turning cold. From that point, it was all downhill. She stared into me like she was trying to extract something. I changed the subject, but her responses became more cryptic. I felt trapped in a very personal, very strange conversation. Eventually, I made up an excuse and left. As I walked away, I could still feel her watching me. I didn't turn around. Later that night, I got a text from her. "Had fun tonight. Did you really mean what you said?" I didn't reply. I blocked her and hoped that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. I started seeing her around town, in cafes, near my work, outside my building. Always alone. Always watching. I never gave her my address or told her where I worked, yet somehow she found me. The messages started coming in again, new numbers, different tones, affectionate, then angry, then desperate. It was like she cycled through emotions, trying to find one that would draw me back in. It went on for weeks. She followed me, watched me, and I never figured out how she was always one step behind. It felt like I'd escaped a trap, barely. Story 2, Kirsty's date with Justin. Today has been one of the hardest days of my life. I still can't process everything that happened. It feels like I'm stuck in a nightmare I can't wake up from. But I need to write it down before the details slip away. My name is Kirsty. I'm 28, and I live in Minneapolis. I've always been a bit introverted, but I try to stay open to new experiences. That's what led me to try Tinder. A few of my friends had found success on there, so I figured, why not? That's how I met Justin. He seemed great, warm smile, pictures of him hiking with his golden retriever, Max. We chatted for a few days, and I found myself genuinely looking forward to his texts. He made me laugh. He seemed thoughtful, attentive. When he suggested grabbing coffee at a local spot on Saturday, I agreed without hesitation. I wore my favorite oversized sweater and black leggings. It was one of those crisp fall days, cool, but not yet freezing. Everything felt right. Justin was already at the cafe when I arrived, Max at his feet. We talked easily about work, childhood memories, embarrassing stories. I started to relax. But then little things started to feel off. He leaned in too close. His laugh had this strange, sharp edge to it. I ignored it. First dates are awkward, right? After a while, he suggested we take Max for a walk in the park nearby. I hesitated, but it felt harmless. We strolled along the trail as the sun set, golden light spilling through the trees. It was beautiful, should have been peaceful. But there was a weird tension I couldn't shake. Eventually, we reached a quiet area of the park. No one was around. That's when two men appeared from deeper in the trees. They looked rough, worn clothes, bad energy. "Hey man, you done with your little date?" One of them called out, laughing. My stomach dropped. Justin's demeanor changed. He stood between me and the men, his voice calm but his hands trembling. "We're just leaving," he said. The men kept walking toward us. "You guys want to chill for a second? We've got something you might like," one said with a smirk. The tone wasn't friendly, it was threatening. Justin suddenly turned to me. "We need to go. Now." But it was too late. One of the men lunged at me. Justin shoved me back as they tried to grab me. Everything turned chaotic. Max barked furiously. I froze, completely paralyzed. Justin fought them off, yelling at me to run. I finally snapped out of it and bolted, sprinting through the park and out onto a quiet street. I screamed for help, desperate for someone, anyone, to hear me. I spotted a small corner store and ran inside, yelling for help. The cashier called 911 as I locked myself in the back room. Through the window, I saw Justin still fighting one of the men. The other had disappeared. Eventually, police showed up. One man was caught. The other vanished and hasn't been found since. Later, I learned the truth. Justin had drug debts. These men offered to clear them if he lured women into isolated spots. He'd agreed, but changed his mind at the last second and chose to protect me instead. You never really think that danger could be sitting across from you on a couch with popcorn in hand. I had been on a handful of dates in the past year. Most of them were uneventful, awkward at worst, boring at best. When I matched with Matthew on Tinder, I wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. His profile was clean, full of soft smiles, candid beach shots, and a photo of him petting a golden retriever. He looked like someone you could trust. We started chatting, and the back and forth felt natural. Matthew had a calm energy that put me at ease. He worked in logistics, loved indie films, and had a dry sense of humor that made me laugh at the most mundane things. After a week of messaging, we met for coffee. Then dinner. Then brunch. By the fourth date, he invited me over to watch a movie at his place. "We've done every cafe, gallery, and overpriced taco truck in the city," he said in a message. "Let's do something low-key." I agreed. It felt like the natural next step. Matthew lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. The building was older, but his place was neat and filled with personal touches. Bookshelves packed with novels, Polaroids pinned to the fridge, and a faint vanilla scent in the air. He handed me a bowl of buttery popcorn and queued up a romantic comedy on his laptop, which he connected to the TV. The first half of the night was lovely. We laughed at all the right moments, and I felt more comfortable than I had on any other date in recent memory. He was attentive, kind, and stayed close enough to show interest, but not so close that it felt invasive. Then everything shifted. Halfway through the movie, Matthew got up to get us more drinks. The screensaver flashed on the TV, and I glanced over at his laptop, which was still open beside me. The screen hadn't locked. I wasn't snooping. At least, I hadn't meant to be. But something on the screen caught my eye, an open browser tab with a thumbnail image that didn't belong. It wasn't a movie or a music playlist. It looked like a figure, a person, covered in something dark. Curiosity got the better of me. I leaned in for a closer look. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. There were several tabs open, some with headlines in Russian, others with blurred-out images of what appeared to be people in distress. One tab was paused on a photo of a person suspended by ropes, blood soaking their clothes, their face obscured but clearly human. I blinked, telling myself I was mistaken, that it was a horror movie still, or some kind of art project. But the more I looked, the more I realized these weren't fictional. These were photos, real people, real suffering. I quickly leaned back, heart thudding in my chest, just as Matthew returned with 2 glasses of soda. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my pale face. I swallowed hard and nodded. "Yeah, just the popcorn's salty." He chuckled and sat down beside me, oblivious to the horror swirling inside me. I tried to focus on the movie, but my eyes kept darting toward the laptop. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. At one point, Matthew leaned closer and asked, "Are you cold? You're shivering." I forced a smile. "A little." He grabbed a blanket and draped it over my shoulders. I thanked him, but my voice trembled. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. Maybe he stumbled across something on the dark web by accident. Maybe it wasn't his. Maybe. But no. That many tabs? That level of detail? This wasn't an accident. I needed to leave. "I should go soon," I said quietly. Matthew looked over, slightly surprised. "Oh, it's still early." "Yeah," I said, standing up slowly. "I just remembered I have an early appointment tomorrow." He paused. "I can drive you if you want." "No, it's fine. I'll take a car." The way his eyes narrowed made my stomach twist. "Natalie, is something wrong?" I hesitated. "No, just tired." He didn't press further. I picked up my jacket, trying not to let my hands shake. As I reached for my phone, I noticed he had closed the laptop. I put on my shoes with deliberate calm, said a quick goodbye, and stepped out into the night. The second the door shut behind me, I bolted down the stairs and around the corner. I didn't stop until I was far enough away that I could breathe. I ordered a rideshare and waited under a street lamp, checking over my shoulder every few seconds. I couldn't shake the image of those photos. The blood, the ropes, the strange, cold fascination it must take to look at something like that and leave the tab open. When I got home, I locked every door and window. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wrote everything I remembered, every tab, every detail, every expression on Matthew's face. The next morning, I reported him on Tinder. Then I filed an anonymous tip with a cybercrime reporting portal. I didn't know if it would lead anywhere, but I had to try. A few days later, I got a call from a local officer. They had received my report and were investigating. They asked if I'd be willing to come in. I agreed. I sat in a small room with a detective named Harris. I explained everything, down to the color of Matthew's laptop and the way the images had been organized. "Did you see anything that looked like a name, a file, a folder?" he asked. "There were folders," I said. One said Archives. Another was labeled Red Collection. I didn't click them, but the tabs were enough. He nodded and wrote everything down. I don't know what happened to Matthew after that. I don't know if they found enough evidence to charge him, or if he disappeared behind a VPN and kept going. All I know is that I got out, but the nightmare didn't end there. For weeks, I kept checking behind me when I walked home. I avoided dating apps, flinched when my phone buzzed. The images haunted me, not because I feared Matthew would come after me, but because I now understood how easy it was to hide in plain sight. I hadn't been on a proper date in 5 months. Not since the breakup. Not since I started avoiding anything that even resembled vulnerability. I told myself I was too busy, too tired, too focused on work. But if I'm being honest, I was just afraid. Then along came Ryan. We met at a mutual friend's birthday dinner, a cozy get-together at a local Italian place in Charlotte. He was wearing a navy blue sweater that made his hazel eyes look even warmer. Quiet at first, but not in a disinterested way. More like he was listening with intention. When I finally worked up the courage to introduce myself, he smiled and said, "I'm glad you did that. I was trying to figure out how to start a conversation with you." That one line, it did something to me. The days that followed were filled with playful texts, silly gifs, and conversations that felt as easy as breathing. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in ages. So when he suggested dinner at a little bistro just down the street from where he lived, I didn't hesitate. To be honest, I was nervous on the night of the date. I changed my outfit twice, straightened my hair 3 times, and nearly canceled once. But something told me to go. So I did. Ryan greeted me outside the restaurant with a shy smile and a hug that lasted just a second longer than expected. We were seated near the window, where fairy lights reflected off the wine glasses and the soft hum of jazz played in the background. I couldn't have designed a more perfect setting. We talked and talked and talked. He asked about my job as a graphic designer. I asked about his work in environmental engineering. We swapped stories about awful bosses and childhood pets. He confessed to a guilty pleasure for early 2000s boy bands, and I admitted I still cried during sad animated movies. It was easy, and the kind of easy that feels rare. And then, somewhere between our second course and dessert, it happened. A strange fluttering started in my chest. At first, I thought it was just nerves or maybe something I ate. But the sensation intensified. My limbs felt heavy. My vision blurred slightly. I tried to stay present, to focus on Ryan's voice, but it was like watching the world through dirty glass. I excused myself and made my way to the restroom, hoping to splash some water on my face and shake off whatever was happening. But when I looked in the mirror, something was wrong. My reflection was pale, my pupils dilated. My hands gripped the sink, and for a moment, I couldn't feel the floor beneath me. Then everything went black. The next thing I remember is cold tile beneath my cheek. My body wouldn't move. I could blink, but that was it. I couldn't lift my arms, couldn't speak. Panic surged inside me, screaming louder than any voice ever could. When the restroom door opened, I saw Ryan's face. His expression twisted in confusion and fear. He knelt beside me, calling my name. "Adele? Adele, can you hear me?" I wanted to answer, to reassure him, but nothing came out. I was trapped inside my body. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called for help. I heard the words, "I think she's having a stroke," before slipping back into darkness. The next few hours were a blur. Flashing lights, paramedics, the rhythmic thump of tires against pavement. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed, connected to machines. A nurse named Carla was adjusting something on a monitor. She smiled gently when she saw me stir. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You scared us." "What happened?" I whispered, though my voice barely made it out. "You had a minor stroke," she replied. "We're going to monitor you, but you're stable now. You're lucky. It could have been much worse." Her words didn't register immediately. A stroke? Me? At 29? I tried to sit up, but winced as a wave of dizziness washed over me. That's when I noticed the figure in the chair beside me. Ryan. Slouched forward, hands clasped, eyes red from lack of sleep. He looked up and gave me a small, tired smile. "I'm so glad you're awake," he said. "You had me terrified. You're still here?" I croaked. He chuckled, a soft, nervous sound. "Of course I am. Where else would I be?" Tears welled up in my eyes. From fear. From relief. From the overwhelming realization that this man, who had only known me for a few weeks, had stayed through it all. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "Don't be," he said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. I just want to make sure you're okay." The doctor came in shortly afterward and explained that the stroke had been brought on by a combination of stress and an undiagnosed condition. "You're young," she said, "but it happens. We caught it early. You're going to recover." I nodded, trying to absorb everything. Over the next 2 days, Ryan never left my side. He brought me warm socks, held my hand during tests, and read random trivia when I couldn't sleep. The hospital staff kept asking if he was my boyfriend. I didn't know how to answer that. I still don't really. When I was discharged, Ryan helped me into a cab and rode with me to my apartment. He made me tea, fluffed my pillows, and watched over me like I was the most precious thing in the world. Weeks passed. I went through physical therapy and follow-ups. I had good days and hard ones. And through it all, Ryan was there. Not out of obligation, but because he wanted to be. One night, while we were watching a movie on my couch, I turned to him and said, "You know, this isn't exactly how I pictured our first date going." He laughed. "Yeah, me neither. I was hoping for maybe a kiss, not a hospital gown." "Sorry to disappoint." "You didn't," he said, taking my hand. "Not even a little." Our relationship didn't start with fireworks or grand gestures. It started with a health scare, a hospital bed, and a man who chose to stay when walking away would have been easier. 3 years later, Ryan is still here. Actually, he's not just here, he's my husband. We got married last spring under a canopy of cherry blossoms in a quiet park outside the city. He still teases me about how dramatic I made our first date. I still remind him that he's the one who cried when I opened my eyes in that hospital bed. Tonight was supposed to be sparkling with possibility, new, exciting, and maybe even romantic. Instead, it spiraled into a strange cocktail of awkwardness, twisted memory, and a lingering sense of cosmic irony. Let me start at the beginning. A week ago, during one of those late-night study spirals fueled by coffee and existential dread, I found myself swiping through Tinder. My fingers moved like a DJ spinning vinyl, half bored, half hopeful. My string lights gave the room a soft glow as I hunched over my laptop, pretending to study statistics when really, I was craving someone, to break the monotony. That's when I saw him. Eldrick Varn, 38. His name alone felt like a character straight out of a gothic novel. He had those eyes like he'd read every chapter of life and still had questions left. His profile was articulate, filled with references to literature, food, and gym routines. A photo of him lifting weights at sunrise. Another of him standing in a library, hand on a worn copy of Camus. I was intrigued, despite the 7-year age gap. It felt refreshing, a break from the usual college crowd of frat bros and philosophy majors who quoted Nietzsche without reading him. Eldrick seemed cultivated. I swiped right. We matched. "Hey," I typed, not expecting much. His response came quickly. "Hello, bright star. What keeps you awake tonight? Ambition or insomnia?" I blinked at my screen. Who says that? Over the next few days, our chats became something I looked forward to. We joked about failed cooking experiments, traded favorite books, even shared travel dreams. He told me he was working on a novel about a man searching for meaning after losing everything. A little cliché, sure, but the way he spoke about it made it feel profound. So when we planned to meet for coffee on October 15th, I was nervous, yes, but also excited. I chose a floral shift dress, simple, relaxed, but confident. The cafe we picked was cozy and tucked away, with just enough space between tables to feel private. It played cheesy love songs on loop, but I told myself I could survive that. I arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a cappuccino. My stomach was fluttering. I kept glancing at the door, watching strangers walk in, wondering if one of them would be him. Then I saw him. Eldrick. He looked slightly older than his pictures, his hair thinner, lines more defined, but somehow it suited him. His smile was the same, though. That crooked, thoughtful smile. I watched him hesitate outside, checking his phone, probably confirming the address before walking in. "Hey you," he said with a grin, casual and oddly sarcastic. "Hi Eldrick," I said, standing to greet him. We exchanged a hug and a kiss on the cheek. There was a flicker of chemistry, but it felt different. Not bad, just awkward. The kind of awkward that comes when two people who once spoke like soulmates suddenly forget how to speak at all. He ordered a black coffee and sat down across from me, his posture relaxed but his eyes scanning, me, the room, maybe his own thoughts. "So, you go to university around here?" he asked. I blinked. That was our opening line. "Yeah, final year at Westvale," I replied. "How about you?" "Oh, graduated ages ago. I work now. Missed the student life though, lectures, debates, all that." I nodded, trying to push away the awkwardness. "You mentioned your novel," I said. "What inspired it?" He chuckled. "Oh, life. All the things it teaches you when you're not paying attention." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Weirdly, the more I tried to engage him, the more he seemed to pull back. Everything that had felt so vibrant in our texts now felt stilted. Then something stirred inside me. A sense of eerie familiarity. His voice, his face. It scratched at something buried in my memory. I studied him more closely. And then it hit me. Eldrick Varn was Professor Varn, the external literature examiner who had absolutely torn apart my assignment 4 years ago. I remember the low mark, the cryptic feedback, the sting of feeling misunderstood. His comments had been filled with obscure literary references and academic jargon that made me question my entire grasp on the subject. At the time, I remember sitting with my professor, trying to decode the feedback and feeling like an idiot. Now here he was, sitting across from me, sipping coffee. There was no question. It was him. My heart started racing. Should I say something? Would it ruin everything? I tried to act normal. I really did. But then my mouth, that traitor, opened before I could stop it. "Do you remember critiquing a literature assignment back in 2018? Contemporary Lit, Westvale University." He blinked. I've marked a lot of papers over the years." I leaned in slightly. "Because I think you marked mine." The color drained from his face. "Oh." There was a pause. A long one. "I just recognized your name. And your voice. It took me a while." He tried to smile, but it was more of a grimace. "Well, that's interesting." I smiled tightly. "Interesting, yeah." Then he stood up. "I need to use the restroom." But I knew. He wasn't going to the restroom. He didn't even glance back as he walked out the door. I sat there, stunned. My cappuccino had gone cold. I wanted to scream at myself. Why did I bring it up? Why couldn't I just pretend not to know? Maybe we could have salvaged the date, had a few laughs, even ended on a high note. But no. I had to be the girl who reminded him of the time he destroyed someone's academic confidence. "Great job, Serafina." "Just fantastic." I paid the bill and left shortly after. Outside, the clouds had gathered, and the first drops of rain began to fall. I pulled my coat tighter and walked home, wondering how many other weird, tangled stories like this had started on Tinder. I met Sean on Tinder, a few weeks after I swore I was done with dating apps for good. I had a few bad dates on a row, so who can blame me? He was a charming young man, better than the rest I had seen prior. We met at a little tapas bar downtown, shared a plate of olives, and lingered long after the check was paid. I remember thinking he seems safe. That was the word I used when I texted my sister afterward. So when he asked to see me again, I didn't hesitate. We met at a cozy wine bar on a Thursday night. I wore a black wrap dress and my favorite, best boots. He was already at a table when I arrived, button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, that same easy smile. "You look beautiful," he said, standing to greet me. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, settling into the seat across from him. We ordered a bottle of red, the kind where neither of us could pronounce the vineyard, and fell into that easy rhythm again. He asked about my work, remembered the names of my roommates, even recalled my favorite kind of tea. I was impressed. Most guys forget everything between dates. About 40 minutes in, I excused myself to use the restroom. I left my drink half full on the table, my phone beside it. I didn't think twice. The hallway to the toilets was dim, lined with old framed photos of vineyards and dusty barrels. When I came out, a woman about my age was waiting outside the ladies' room. She looked up as I passed and said quietly, "Hey, sorry, this is weird, but are you with the guy at table 7? I blinked. Yeah." Her eyes were serious. "I think he put something in your drink when you left." I stared at her, frozen. "What?" "I was sitting at the bar. I saw him pull something from his coat pocket and drop it into your glass. It dissolved fast. I wasn't totally sure, but I work in a hospital. I've seen that kind of thing before." My mouth went dry. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Not 100%, but sure enough that I wouldn't drink it." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear the music anymore. I looked past her, toward the entrance to the hallway. I could just make out our table. Sean was scrolling through his phone, drink untouched. I forced myself to breathe. "Thank you," I whispered. "Seriously." She touched my shoulder. "Be careful." I walked back to the table, trying not to show anything in my face. Trying not to scream. "Everything all right?" Sean asked, looking up with that same warm smile. "Yeah," I said, sliding into my seat. "Sorry. Long line." He lifted his glass. "Cheers to second dates." I hesitated, then smiled. "Cheers." I raised my glass, tilted it just enough to clink his, and set it down without drinking. My stomach twisted. I tried to act normal. I asked him about his weekend plans, pretended to laugh at his story about a dog park disaster, all while my mind raced. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of there. But I didn't want to tip him off. If that woman was right, I didn't know what this man was capable of. I told him I wasn't feeling great, that the wine was hitting me harder than expected. He offered to walk me home. I declined. He offered to call a car. I said I'd already ordered one. I left my glass half full. Outside, the air was cold. I walked fast, heart in my throat. I didn't call a car. I walked 4 blocks before ducking into a well-lit cafe and calling the police. I told them everything. They took it seriously. 2 officers arrived quickly. I described Sean, the bar, the woman who'd warned me. They said they'd send someone to talk to her too, if they could find her. I handed over the name of the wine bar, our table number, the waiter's name if I remembered it. They assured me they'd follow up. I never saw Sean again. But a week later, I got a call from the detective assigned to the case. They had tested the remaining wine in my glass. There was something in it. A sedative, fast-acting, hard to detect, common in cases like this. The detective said Sean had left the bar shortly after me. They hadn't found him yet, but they were looking. That night haunted me for a long time. I think about the woman who warned me. I never got her name. I wish I had. She might have saved my life. I hadn't seen Tristan in over a year, not since he left me at a gas station at 2 a.m. with nothing but my phone and a dead battery. No goodbye, no apology, just the slam of a car door and the echo of my own disbelief. So when I saw his name show up on Tinder last week, my stomach twisted. But it wasn't him. Not directly. The profile belonged to Elliot, 30, dark hair, green eyes, a smile that felt too calculated. But the bio? Just looking for someone who doesn't run when things get messy. That was a Tristan thing. Word for word. He used to say it when I cried. I swiped right. We matched instantly. The conversation was short. Mechanical. "Elliot, you look like someone I used to know." "Me. Maybe you still do." "Elliot, want to meet up? There's a bar off Holloway Street. The Lantern. 9 p.m. I hesitated. That place was half abandoned, barely holding on to its liquor license. But I needed closure, or something like it. When I arrived, the place was nearly empty. The bartender gave me a nod, barely looking up from his crossword. The clock behind him ticked louder than the music. 9:10, 9:20, 9:37. No Elliot. No Tristan. I felt the familiar sting of humiliation creep up my neck. My fingers hovered over my phone, ready to text, to confront. But the app froze. Then crashed. When I reopened Tinder, the match was gone. The profile? Deleted. I stood to leave, trying to shake off the embarrassment. But as I turned, the bartender called out, "You Emily?" I paused. "Yeah." He slid a small envelope across the counter. "Guy dropped this off earlier. Said you'd know what it meant." I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photo, grainy, taken from a distance. It was me, sitting alone at the bar. Time-stamped, 9:32 p.m. On the back, written in sharp, angry script, "Now you know how it feels. T." I dropped the photo. The room suddenly felt colder. The bartender was staring at me now, eyes unreadable. I backed away toward the door, heart pounding. Outside, the street was empty. Dark. Dead quiet. Except for the flicker of a lighter behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Only the faint scent of his cologne. The one he wore when he left me behind. And somewhere, close but unseen, I swear I heard him laugh. I never thought I'd be on Tinder at 66. But grief changes you. Loneliness changes you. It had been almost 3 years since my husband, Thomas, passed. Cancer. Quiet, cruel, and fast. After he was gone, the house felt like a museum of echoes. Rooms filled with silence. A sink that stayed empty. A bed too large. My children, grown and scattered across states, had suggested I try meeting people online. "You don't have to fall in love," my daughter said. "Just talk to someone." So, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I downloaded the app. Navigating it was awkward. The swiping felt juvenile, the profiles a blur of toothy smiles and vague bios. Still, I persisted. Maybe I just wanted to be seen again. Then I matched with Selim Vire. His name sounded like a character out of a novel, mysterious, romantic. He was 52, a photographer who traveled where light and stories met. His pictures were stunning. Himalayan peaks, desert ruins, a black and white image of a crow in flight. He messaged me first. "You remind me of someone from a dream I once had," he wrote. I laughed out loud. It was absurd, but it was also flattering. We talked every day after that. He told me about his travels, about chasing sunsets from Morocco to Mongolia. He asked about my life, my kids, my favorite kind of tea. His messages were poetic, thoughtful. He made me feel interesting again, like someone worth listening to. He never asked for anything. Not at first. Then a few weeks in, he sent me a photo of a shattered camera lens. "Dropped it during a storm in Buenos Aires," he said. "I'm devastated." I sympathized. Said I hoped he had insurance. He joked, "I wish. But freelancers like me don't always get the safety net." Another week passed. We were talking about meeting someday, maybe in Charleston, where I'd spent part of my childhood. And then he said it. "I hate to ask, Joe, but I need help. Just a little. Enough to repair the lens. I'll pay you back as soon as the next client pays. Promise." I hesitated, but I sent the money. Not a fortune. Just $1,200. Enough to feel nervous about, but not enough to admit I was being foolish. He thanked me with such warmth, such sincerity, that I believed him. I wanted to. He sent more photos, of a new lens, of the sunrise in Patagonia, of a sketch he'd drawn of me from memory. It looked nothing like me, but I cried anyway. Then, 2 weeks later, he vanished. No messages. No profile. Gone. I checked my bank app. The transfer had gone through. I messaged. Waited. Googled his name. Found nothing. No photographer. No exhibitions. Just silence. I sat at my kitchen table that night, staring at my untouched cup of chamomile tea, feeling like the world had played a cruel joke on me. It wasn't just the money. It was the feeling of being seen. The illusion that someone wanted to know me again. I didn't tell my kids. I couldn't bear to see that look on their faces. Pity. Disappointment. The quiet "I told you" so they'd never say out loud.